You are learning what it takes to build a better world.
We must rebuild trust for a better future.
You're gambling with World War III.
How dare you?
Shoot them dead.
It comes from China.
Tensions escalating on the Texas border.
Misinformation.
Misinformation.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
We had a more serious pandemic of crazy revolutionary behaviour.
Comrades, the education system now is being organised to turn young people into activists to further the revolution.
Marxism feigns or fakes concern for people and groups, particularly the oppressed.
This is communism. There's no better word for it.
Unless people are going to come back with a new personality and an evolved attitude, we're not going to win.
Welcome, ladies and gents. This is Emmett, the host of the Resolving Reality podcast and the author of the book, Red Pandemic, The Global Marxist Cult. Back with another series of live streams, interviews, videos, some other bits and pieces as well. So if you wouldn't mind, whichever platform you're watching on, please do like, follow, subscribe, share this content and drop your comments down below as well. Your support is greatly appreciated. So in today's show, I'm speaking to a fellow Irish content creator. He's very prolific and successful, and I'm delighted I've got him on the show here finally. So without further ado, I'll bring on my guest, Mr. Chris Walsh. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Emma. I appreciate the kind words. You know, I'm sure you're very familiar with the content creation space as well. We're all trying to push the movement, hopefully, in the right direction.
Oh yes, man, absolutely. And I've been aware of you for a while now, and whenever I encounter a content creator like yourself, I feel bad. I go what a bastard. He's so prolific. How does he do it? Where does he get the energy? I mean, I presume you're on the case every day with this stuff. You're constantly watching what's going on, trying to come up with new ideas for videos, pretty much. That's how I picture it, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. A lot of people are putting out content every day. Instagram, X. I know you put out a ton of content as well. I've seen you for a long time now, for like a few years, and people putting out content every day is kind of how we win this war against the mainstream. The mainstream is constantly pumping out their propaganda. They're trying to brainwash people with RTE, with all these different platforms, and, with all their massive funding. And then, just some of us with smartphones and laptops are able to easily fight back against this tyranny. And I think that it's only really been taking place over the last 2 or 3 years, really. That's kind of when the real push has happened. Obviously, there's been a lot of people in the last 5, 10, 15 years that's been pushing back heavily. John Waters and these other people as well. And I've been watching them as well for a long, long time. But really now, with social media being so at the forefront, TikTok, all these different platforms, we can really push back against this. And there's been a massive wave. I have lots of people in the local gym now, all these different people I see in my city. Tons of people are making content, and it's really getting the people on the side, and it's really waking people up to the fact, because up till, like I said, 2 or 3 years ago, we only had the mainstream media here in this country. Like, we didn't have alternative platforms, and people say, well, we can't win. A lot of, pessimistic people, but realistically, only within the last 2 or 3 years has there been platforms and people pushing back, because I've been following it very closely since 10 years ago, since Trump was elected, since, all that, alt-right, whatever, coming in, right-wing coming in the US. So, a lot of people here don't realize the only reason it's starting to take off is because the last 2 or 3 years, there's been other voices that's been actually be able to push back against this, craziness.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on, and there's so much going on. I definitely agree that this pushback is it's on so many fronts all across social media and the internet, and it's absolutely essential. But when I became aware of you, first of all, there definitely was a shift in content. When I became aware of you first, I know you do different types of things. There was the fitness stuff, music stuff, and you start to move in to the heavier kind of content. But you didn't really start out doing this kind of stuff, did you?
No, I was thinking about it the last day. I used to love watching, all these conspiracy theory shows when I was 14, 15 years old. on TV, you know, we had the Skybox, right? So it only had like the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, Geography, National Geographic, all these different channels, and it had these different shows. Jesse Ventura had, you know, the conspiracy theory show. It had all these different American political commentators, right? And that kind of ties into the whole Trump thing as well, like, you know, with Alex Jones and these people sort of with that, you know, political stance. And I was aware of politics back then, 14, 15. And then I started YouTube. I mostly focused on music. And then when I realized people wanted to hear about politics, you know, I really started focusing on international politics as well. I started talking about different things happening overseas, and then really starting to hone in on just Irish politics. I didn't realize how much there was a space for Irish politics. And I never even thought you know, I would even talk too much about that if people wanted to hear me talk about it. But definitely, you know, hopefully more people get involved with politics as well. I still love the music. I still love the fitness, of course. But, you know, politics is really, you know, you're really helping the country as well. You know, it's more altruistic than just talking about music. Music is good, and, you know, you can express yourself, but this country is definitely at a crossroads, and it's been at a crossroads for a little time now, a few years. And I think that helping with this, I mean, it's the least I can do to help people if they enjoy the content. If they don't, it is what it is. I still put out musical videos as well. I still like, you know, sports, talking about McGregor fighting on Saturday and these different things. But, you know, the politics is really, really impactful. And I personally love that as well, and I have done since a young age as well. So
yeah, maybe that's, I think that's actually good, because I've had a lot of conversations with people recently about how all this bigger picture stuff, the fighting globalism thing, can kind of grind you down a bit. So I think your formula is really good, where you're still mixing up the content a little bit, keeping things lighthearted. I mean, I'm a big UFC fan myself. I know all about the McGregor fight. I love getting into stuff like that, just to switch off, you know, and just kind of relax. It's so important, isn't it, to kind of have that balance?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think when you have that broad kind of spectrum of things as well, you kind of look maybe a little bit more appealing to people, especially in Ireland. People are very, you know, cautious or careful. They don't know, is this guy a lunatic? Is this guy crazy? And you can easily be perceived as that. So you want to kind of show people, like, you know, you're a regular person as well. You know, you're not just this person on the screen, you know, spouting off whatever, you know, some political point that they don't agree with. You're just a regular person. And I think maybe sometimes as well, when we see these like elites on TV, you know, you're never going to see whoever, Simon Harris at the local GA pitch, or, you know, Micheál Martin at the gym or whatever. You're never going to see these people walking around in daily public. And when you do, they get a cost, you know, with a very rare time, you know, you have people accosting them. So there's definitely this kind of, you know, aspect that I want to really show people, that everybody understands that this is correct. This is the correct path to lead. You know, when you're just kind of maybe talking about the same thing every single day, maybe some people get a bit numb to it as well. I remember that was one of the things that, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger said about the action movies. He said, you know, when there's so much action in the movie, you get a bit numb to the violence or whatever. You know, you have to throw some comedy, you have to throw a little bit of things in there as well to kind of wake people up. So that's how I think it helps to kind of add to the different aspects of you know, politics and music as well, and the culture, I suppose, as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Great points. I'm going to steal that one, what Arnie said about the action and stuff. You got to mix it up so it's not all the same. I appreciate that for sure. And I mean, say, because I did notice that shift in your content, but yet you said you're aware of pretty much what's going on for a long time. You mentioned, I think, about 10 years or thereabouts. So that's cool. But I noticed the kind of shift in you a little bit more recent, maybe even within the last few years. Was there any kind of one event or something that triggered you to go down that road, or did you just kind of think to yourself, oh, it's about time I kind of push the content a bit more towards the, you know, the serious stuff?
You know, it's a good question. I saw a lot of other YouTubers making content, and they're making more international politics content. And, you know, one of my friends actually told me, why are you reacting to American music and all this international music when they have their own creators to do that? You know, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, you know, people want to hear their own people talk about their own things. Let me talk about something that's local as well. But is there any one particular thing? You know, when I first started reacting to politics, it was around the time when this different wars happening in the Middle East. You know, so I talked about that, and that video went crazy. And I said, well, there's definitely a real appetite for this, especially people here in Ireland. And I remember seeing around that time not very many creators even talking about politics, even talking to my friends, they said, oh, I would never talk about politics. That's crazy. And I kind of said, well, I mean, if no one's talking about it, then how are we going to ever have a voice? How are we ever going to change anything? I don't know if there's any particular moment. I think over time it definitely clicked that people want this. You know, people really appreciate the fact that, you know, an Irish person is talking about something that's actually happening day to day. You know, you can see him as relatable. Maybe if people see, you know, John Waters, who's, I mean, the GOAT, he's the greatest ever, maybe it's not as appealing to maybe a 20-year-old, you know, or a person in secondary school. Because I get a lot of people saying, Chris, my kids watch your content, which is just incredible to me, because it's like, you know, even at 14, 15, I did have an interest in politics, but maybe I didn't have such an interest in you know, this sort of micro politics of Ireland, I would call it, compared to the macro that is like the US and China, Russia, all these different massive political events happening around the world. And although it would be great to talk about those political matters too, I think it's more relevant to talk about things that are happening back home. But yeah, is there any particular moment on YouTube? I would say it's around that time, around the wars in the Middle East and, you know, different sort of sectors like that. So I wasn't necessarily talking about Irish politics per se, but it is good to talk about more local politics because it's more relevant to, you know, who I am, like where I'm from and everything like that. So it just made a lot more sense, you know, and I enjoy it more as well. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. And I mean, because you mentioned about, you know, who watches your content and so on, part of me thinks, I mean, I have heard of this before because this kind of stuff has been going on since about, to me, you know, 2015, 16, I started really paying attention to the trends on the internet, how content creators were kind of drifting more into this anti-globalism stuff. And it happened to people so many times where they kind of changed their content and it really affected their fan base. I know some people who had to, like, it literally destroyed them and even some of the income or earnings from online stuff, and they had to rebuild themselves and try and find a new audience. Did you find that when you did that kind of shift that some people went a little bit like, you know, this is a bit too much for me, or was there any sort of reactions like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Nobody actually really said anything. A lot of my audience was like from overseas, you know, from like Southeast Asia and these different countries. I reacted to a lot of like foreign music, American music a little bit as well. But I think people appreciated the fact that politics is more relevant. It's more impactful as well. You know, I feel like you're actually kind of helping people with the music. It's a little bit, you know, you're kind of just maybe enjoying the culture, which is great and everything. But, and I react to, you know, Irish music as well. But it definitely is more impactful. And it's great that you talk about around 2015, 2016, because I was just in college then. So I just about started college. I was like 20 years old. I took 2 years off from secondary school and I went in, and I remember clear as day, I woke up in the morning and we saw Trump get elected. Now, obviously, like I said, like I think a lot of people, their opinion on Trump has kind of shifted a little bit. Okay, there's good things, there's bad things. But I remember back in 2016 when he got elected, one of my lecturers in GMIT, ATU now, Atlantic Technological University in Galway, she basically ran into the classroom crying in tears, you know, super upset. She said, I can't believe, you know, this guy got elected. And I remember the whole classroom being silent, and there's probably about 35, 40 of us in there. And then me specifically saying, I think he has a few good policies. And that pretty much ended my good relationship with that teacher, because from that moment on, she just targeted me. You know, I would get like, you know, 60%, maybe 70%, 60, 50%. I wasn't the highest achiever in college, but she would just drop me at 40, 45, you know, just always the lowest grades every single time for the next 4 years. And I had her for 4 years. So, you know, this politicizing of everything, and she definitely did that, you know, almost was biased because it was affecting my grades. So I kind of want to hope in the future that now that I'm very outspoken about this, hopefully impacts, you know, the future people coming up in like colleges and stuff, that they're able to speak more freely about being more right-leaning or whatever the case may be, anti-establishment or whatever the case may be, because I don't necessarily think it's more right-leaning too. You know, I was just talking to my brother today. He said, you know, appeal to more people, appeal to the left almost if you can in some aspects. And, you know, I almost definitely think that in colleges it's super, super left leaning. But, you know, if you want to bring in a new aspect, you know, you shouldn't be docked points in your results because of that. And it was clear that she was just absolutely against anything that didn't align with her super left wing or liberal values.
Yeah, I mean, well, what you said, and it's kind of funny in a way because it's so predictable and it doesn't shock me at all. And there's definitely a lot of that stuff going on. You literally just said, I mean, I agree with some of his policies, and that's it. Like, you're a far right Nazi, all of a sudden they want to chuck you in the gulag just because you don't hate them. I dealt with it so many times. I had an ex-girlfriend of mine 10 years ago, just out of the blue, no interest in politics, current affairs, turned around and said, I hate Trump. And I was like, okay, great. That's it. That's what's on your mind. You know, it's such programming. Yeah. But, you know, on that whole stuff, you know, the Overton window and so on, would you always have kind of considered yourself more of a nationalist, or have you been on a bit of an evolution, or where do you kind of stand on all that?
I will say this. I was never left-leaning. I never pushed any of the medications in 2020. I never did any of that. Ever. Even though I knew nothing about politics. You know, I knew nothing about politics, really. But what I did know is, like I said, at 14, 15, watching Alex Jones on YouTube, watching this conspiracy theory show with Jesse Ventura, who's more of a libertarian, I would say, right? But definitely always more right-leaning. You know, definitely, okay? And I know in Ireland they say, well, there's no left or right. It's, you know, it's more center-right and this kind of, you know, bullshit. But definitely always right-leaning. But I never even knew what it was. I was so in the matrix, I would call it. You know, when you grow up here in Ireland, and a lot of people don't talk about this. They want to just insult people that are left-leaning, or they want to insult people that are just not knowledgeable about what's happening in the country. I don't ever do that. I just think, like, I think a lot of people are just uneducated on what's actually happening, because I was the same way. It wasn't that I was left or right-leaning. I was definitely right-leaning if you were to actually break it down, you know, pro-gun, pro-this, pro-everything, right? Let's say if it was on an American scale, right, and more pro-Republican. But, you know, I definitely think that people are super, you know, uneducated with these topics. You know, like I was. I had no clue what the hell was going on. Literally, you know, till about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, with Irish politics. Obviously, overseas, we see things on the internet. But definitely, watching all these different YouTubers, Alex Jones, all these different people talking about politics, I was definitely absolutely more right-leaning. I was never, ever in any regard left-leaning with policy-wise. So,
yeah, it's a good one. I know it's like a box standard question, but I'm always curious about that, because often people go through these different types of personal evolutions and so on. And how's it going with, say, you know, since you've kind of changed your content and moved, not changed your content, but focused more on the anti-globalism or kind of patriotic stuff, has that created more opportunities for you? Like, I saw you had a few appearances on different podcasts and stuff. You know, tell us about that, and what were some of the big ones?
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. You know, people do really appreciate the content. I don't even look at it like, you know, I'm looking for more opportunity in that way, but definitely people love the fact that a guy is outspoken about it. You know, maybe a lot of people, you know, maybe they work this job that they can't say anything. And I felt like that way as well. You know, I always was like, I'm going to take my freedom over everything. And whether that be, you know, I want to go to the gym in the morning and then I want to work for the rest of the day. But for a lot of the jobs that I worked 9 to 5, working in a health food shop, working in marketing and sales for these different companies, medical companies, you can't really say what you want to say, although a lot of people were outspoken back then. It definitely helps when people are more outspoken, because it changes the Overton window. But yeah, I was on the show with John Waters and James Conway as well. He's a great guy. A couple months ago, I think John Waters has gotten a bit ill or something like that. So I wish him well. He's a great guy. I read his book, that book as well that he gave me. I read, you know, like half of it. It's an amazing book. But has it opened up more opportunity? I would say in terms of the political realm, yeah, but I'm not even too big on, let's say, running for a political party like that. You know, the National Party just had a conference there, and I think the National Party are amazing. But right now, in terms of just the media space, I want to remain a little bit more independent. Okay, now I'm always independent, of course. Okay, I'm not funded by anyone or anything like that. But it definitely helps when you're more independent, because as soon as you start taking funding from different people or anything like that, you basically are reliant on them. And like I said, I just want my freedom to do what I want, and I don't particularly want to be supporting anything in a super rigid manner. Absolutely, I support the National Party. They're absolutely amazing, and I actually hope that they get in. They're really, really good, along with a few other parties, as much as we can help them. But that's pretty much the only party that I see that's really really pushing the boundaries on that. But yeah, definitely it's great to see people actually appreciating the content and inviting me to different things like that, to the podcast with John Waters. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, he's a great guy. I learned a lot from him, and I'm just still learning as well. You know, I'm trying to learn from all these great people as well, trying to get educated. And that's what I always tell to people as well: try and get more educated with these topics, because a lot of this stuff can be maybe very, you know, mind numbing at sometimes. So you have to kind of take it day by day.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been saying that for years myself. I mean, my views have changed quite a lot. I think about 2012, I started to think more kind of nationalistic, and to me that seemed like the obvious logical, you know, antithesis to globalism, or whatever that agenda is, like the open borders, all countries should be the same sort of thing. That was definitely natural for me. And certainly Mr. John Waters was one of the first video interviews I did. I was probably like 2018 or whatever. Like, poor John, I turned up at his house a little bit late, carrying all my gear in, and when you meet him, you go, oh my God, he's actually huge. He's a tall guy. And then when I remember doing the interview, setting up all the cameras, I was all over the place, but he's very gracious. I mean, actually looking back at the tape before I edited before I start talking, and I could see him sitting in the chair with this kind of look on his face, like he's a little bit tired, but he was kind of putting up with me, but he was so patient, and what a legend, you know. And I kind of think of characters like, what do you think of, say, characters like that? He's been doing this a long time. It's very admirable that someone like him can keep doing this thing and keep talking, even though he's been watching things kind of go awry for probably like whatever 15, 20 years now. Is that something that's been on your mind as well?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, these people, and there's new people coming out all the time. Like, I remember watching James Conway for the first time a couple of years ago, and then doing his podcast. That was actually my first podcast that I ever did, and I thought that I was quite boring on the podcast. I didn't really make much sense. I wasn't really talking that much. If we run it back, I'll definitely bring a lot more information to it. But James Conway's a great guy. You know, I listen to him, and he's always with, as well, John Waters. You know, those two go together like it's amazing. You know, listening to them speak, it's just unbelievable. I'm just in such admiration when I was watching John Waters and James Conway and a host of other people on that podcast a few months ago. But yeah, absolutely. To keep going like that is amazing. The consistency is really what's going to win. Consistency wins at everything in life. And I think that you know, that they're putting out content, books, podcasts like you're doing as well since 2012. And it's absolutely amazing. Just consistency over time will eventually win. I definitely think that we're going to eventually win. I mean, the tide has massively turned with X being bought. Is just huge. That was a massive turn in the tide as well. So hopefully in the future we just kind of keep pushing away, and there's more people added to this group. Like I said, I see people now at my local gym, they're posting massive, getting huge, you know, 4 million, 5 million views on one Instagram video during the Belfast beheading, or attempted beheading, and all these different things that are happening over time. People are now starting to post their own content. They're not afraid of being judged by anybody, because not that just that the Overton window is shifted, but people are getting a lot more brave now. They're saying this is absolutely crazy. We won't even have a country if this shit keeps going. So, you know, it is definitely a massive, great sign of the future.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole. There seems to be these incidents now and again that kind of capture people's imagination, and I'm sure your reach, surely, I mean, I've got reach in certain circles, but I'm sure your reach is probably more, even internationally as well. And have you ever had that, you know, people from outside of Ireland, whenever there's an incident like, say, the Belfast incident, people contact you and go, oh my God, you know, what's happening over there? What, you know, and they'll say something like, why aren't the Irish rising up and so on? How do you deal with that when people ask you those questions?
Yeah, I definitely find it amazing that people really do care, because maybe sometimes people think as Ireland is like a non-player in the world stage, like we're so small, we're so little people, but people understand that there's so much Irish heritage, you know, in the US, like 50 million, I think, claim heritage, or at least 30 million, and to see all these people caring about what's happening back in the home country, in the homeland, is absolutely amazing. But people do reach out to me all the time. I get a lot of emails, so much love to everybody. I'm very grateful for all the emails that I get from people, and I try and answer them all. But people really, they're very concerned about what's happening here. People from the UK, people from everywhere. Actually, I get people from all over the world, random places in the world wondering what's happening in this country, because YouTube has such a reach. And it's great to see that now the internet isn't censored. But a lot of people say the internet wasn't censored 10, 15 years ago. I don't really see it as that. I think that a lot of people got censored. Like I always talked about Alex Jones. He got his YouTube channel taken down fully. So that really is extremely hard to happen nowadays. Okay. It's extremely hard to happen nowadays. And, you can avoid it in some aspects with actually still keeping the sort of mainstream narrative that of the right. So it's great to see that. But definitely people, see that the reach is massive compared to what it used to be. I mean, this is why they're trying to ban the internet. They're talking about bringing in censorship. Under 16-year-olds need to be banned from the internet. This is all just complete nonsense. 16-year-olds, it's just completely redundant to even suggest that this is going to make an impact whatsoever. People have VPNs. People can get around it. They just want everybody to have their picture on the internet. That's it. Because if it's for under 16s, then we have to prove then, if you're over 16. So then if I'm 30, if I'm 50, if I'm 60, I have to then put my face up on the internet and digital tracking, digital ID. So, this is all the ruse to basically get us all censored and kicked off the internet, because the internet really is the only means of dissent now. It's very hard for people to protest every day. There might be one or two big protests in the year, but they don't really achieve much, unless it's the fuel protest, which I think achieved a ton. I think the fuel protest really scared the mainstream establishment. But just walking up and down the street, it's great to see numbers, and it's great to collaborate with people, and it's great for motivation and morale. But the internet is where you're going to get those massive amounts of numbers at home and overseas, and it's absolutely starting to turn, because they're trying to just basically ban the internet. I mean, it's unreal. So, and I know you can probably see on X as well, they're trying to crack down on your channel. You have a big following as well, so you're always putting up great content. They're trying to crack down on this stuff. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's great points, and there's also, I totally agree. I mean, the internet is a massive battlefield, and we had those EU directives. I remember back as far as 2018 interviewing some content creators on this about the European Union trying to control the free speech thing. Then we've got the problem of several of the HQs of some of the social media companies, they have HQs in Dublin and so on. And you kind of think, my God, the lefties in the state or whatever it is, they have to be trying to control that directly or indirectly. And I definitely noticed with my YouTube channel and my X account, they've been damaged. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not getting I wouldn't be on your level. I don't consider myself a proper YouTuber. People understand how to work the algorithm and stuff, but I did notice a massive change. Is this something that's kind of ever hit you at any point, like where you thought maybe there's something not right here with my reach kind of?
Absolutely. Even just a few weeks ago, because I'm analyzing everything, like completely analyzing everything constantly. And I just stay on YouTube as my main platform, but I analyze things on different platforms, but YouTube specifically, for like a week at a time, they try and just target the videos. Okay. And I have a method to get around that. Okay. And I don't want to specifically say that here. I'll tell you off camera. But, it has to do with posting other videos and other topics, let's just say, right? So, I'm trying to mix up content constantly to try and confuse this restriction, because I think Commission Iman come in, and I have no evidence for this, it's purely speculative, but I think the Commission Iman target at certain times the YouTube channel, because I'll put up 100 videos in a few weeks span, in a few months span, and they'll get perfectly fine. They're perfectly fine, absolutely no restriction whatsoever. And then for no reason whatsoever, after the fuel protest, like a week after the fuel protest, every single video for the next 5 days just hit like this with limited, you must be over 18 to watch the video, or limited on this. And there is zero difference between the content I was making at that time to what I was making then. Okay. So then I had to switch up the name. I switched from migrant to asylum seeker. I switched from this to this. So it's all this big game that they're trying to play with us. And we are going to win that goddamn game. Let me tell you, like Commission Iman, and I can tell they're targeting, because it's such a specific attack. Because that month of the fuel protests, I got 1 million long form views just from just from the videos. I was getting like 20,000 views in an hour on some videos. It was crazy. It was the craziest month ever because people really wanted to see what the hell was happening here. And it was all from Irish-based accounts, some British as well, but it was all from Irish following. And this is the impact that we're having now. And not just me, there's much other big people as well. There's a few other YouTubers that film themselves in Galway, in Northern Ireland as well, I believe, and Derek Domino as well. There's a host of other guys. They're absolutely amazing, and I'm watching. And it's not all about views, but in this specific warfare, this, I would call it psychological warfare that they're trying to enact on the people, it is a little bit about that. You know, they're trying to get all the views for their legacy media, but in reality, you know, they're pumping in 200 or 720 million in what, a 4-year span, and they can't even make that money back. They just announced this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, I just made a video today about it, that they're like hemorrhaging money. They're losing. They need a bailout of 51 million or something. It's like unbelievable. Could you imagine how many views I would get if I had 51 million, or if I had 1 million, if I had 100,000 coming in? I mean, these people have unlimited money, and they still can't get the reach or the impact because they know they're lying, they know they're spreading propaganda, and then ironically they come back in a callous, vicious manner and say that we're spreading misinformation, we're spreading propaganda, and it's unbelievable. That complete projection, complete psyop, and we know exactly their game now.
Yeah, well, that's great. You're talking about how to stay ahead of their maneuvers. Is like this cat and mouse game of like just changing the words. I mean, it's funny because I mean, I suppose they're going to retrain the algorithms and use AI to come up with the alternatives to what you might think of. You have to constantly play this cat and mouse game. I mean, do you think that process is going to keep continuing forwards now? And I mean, the AI thing has to be massively impactful here. I mean, they're programming these things to think the way we think and so on. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they should almost give up at this point in trying to control the free speech on the internet. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just eroding our freedoms, it's stealing our freedoms away. It's something that we don't, need, we don't want as a people. It's totally unnecessary. But the AI definitely, I think at one point a few weeks ago or a few months ago, I believe, around the time of the fuel protests, they said that, I think it was, I could be completely wrong, but I think it was 50,000 YouTube accounts got completely canceled because they had AI content. So if you had any kind of like monotone voice of somebody, or if you had AI content in your video, like music or video content, then they took away your channel. They just terminated your channel as a crackdown of getting rid of AI content on YouTube. So they don't want any kind of AI content, but this is AI scanners that are doing that. It's just unbelievable. But the AI will definitely get worse. It'll get more intense. And I mean, hopefully, because once you get over 100,000 subscribers, you get a personal person to review your YouTube channel. It's not just like a pure AI. So you have somebody that's personally, and I think after 1 million, you get a personal assistant for YouTube subscribers, but we're a long way away from that now. But at least there's somebody behind the work, kind of, that I'm able to talk to a little tiny bit, because YouTube is just terrible with their explanation of why they cancel channels. They actually won't tell you. Like other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, X, they're a little bit better with telling you what content you can and can't put up. But YouTube, because they don't want lawsuits and all this kind of nonsense, they're just terrible with their sort of, I would call it, HR system.
I lost you. Sorry, 1 second. So I suppose with the amount of content creators out there, they have to really, they can't have like a personal approach to everybody. You have to get kind of big enough to kind of get their attention. That kind of makes sense to me. But in terms of, say, the content you've been creating recently, then, to just kind of get into some of the stuff and more topical stuff and stuff you've been talking about, what have been the kind of major outstanding stories to you that you're mostly concerned about? Because I know that looking at your kind of, your YouTube feed here you're doing, which is brilliant, of course, you know what you're doing. These are like, short form videos, because people's attention spans, just the short form content and so on. But what would you say are the big stories recently that have really stood out to you, pretty much?
Well, the fuel protest was massive. That was one of the biggest points of the year. But then I would say on the same level would be like these kind of violent attacks happening all over the country, whether it's people fighting, people brawling, having these WWE style brawls in Dublin or Cork, the stabbings and the shootings as well, gangland shootings. So all these things that are primary source videos from X, people want to see this, and people reacting to it and talking about it and giving details about this, because some video will pop up on X and it'll be somebody filming a fight or something happening, whether it be an immigrant or something to do with mass immigration, or it could be a native person as well, fighting. But up in Dublin, they'll post this video then on X, and obviously mainstream media will never talk about this stuff. They try and create the news, they curate the news, that they don't really want to have any sort of right-leaning slant at all. They're completely biased. They're completely also as well trying to gatekeep the news. So you have all these different aspects of the mainstream that won't post about these stories, and you'll never see them. These news stories will just get buried. So what I like to do is take them, post them, try and get as much as I can to highlight these issues, and hopefully then we actually bring back a proper narrative, because the narrative that they're throwing is just completely propaganda, completely brainwashing to the people. But if we can take primary source videos, if we can talk about murders and actual statistics, like I saw one today, that I think over the last 7 days, 5 of the murders have been foreign men, according to Women's Aid or Women's Council on their official channel. So it's like, incredible that people will try and swing this other narrative. Like the politicians, Ruth Coppinger, literally was shouting about how the mainstream news, the mainstream legacy news, was reporting that he was an asylum seeker. We shouldn't be hearing about this. We shouldn't be hearing about these facts. I mean, I don't understand. They also said that it was horrific that we saw this man getting his head sawn off. I mean, it's such a violent even way to describe it. This guy getting literally massacred up in Belfast. They didn't want us to see the video. They said it's horrendous that my entire news feed, that very morning at 6 a.m., we saw this. But this is exactly what we need to see. Okay, I don't want to see, maybe crazy things happening in other countries, because it's not super relevant to us. Of course, there's absolutely horrible things over there, and we do see that. But I definitely want to see, and Irish people should see, what's happening in this country, especially Belfast and Dublin and all these different places. If we didn't see that this man was sitting on top of him, straddling him, trying to behead him, then this news wouldn't be reported. They would say a man got stabbed in Belfast, and it would just be another news story. But because we have an actual primary source video, God bless that lady for recording it and throwing it up on the internet real quick, then now we actually have honest media, and they just want to kind of create the media. It's super unfair to the people, and I think it's just destroying, narratives.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, this is where there is this game, and that's probably why they want to control the internet, because people can just whip out that phone and catch things now. But I'm sure you noticed how they try to spin things, like with that incident, the American, I kind of haven't been paying an awful lot of attention to it, but Jamie Carney, I'll just switch over to that view. So, I mean, she was murdered, and then there's already talk, which I've kind of predicted, that they are going to try to spin this into being a feminist issue, right? So they did it with Aisling Murphy as well, where they try to say this is like it's a pandemic of violence against women by kind of avoiding the whole the truth that this is a mass immigration problem, the clash of cultures. They did the same thing with Aisling Murphy, and I put that into my book, and I had a tweet earlier. Dr. Owen Lenihan talked about that in his feed. A great analyst said the same thing. Women's Aid is they acknowledge there's been like 8 fatalities so for femicides, they call it, but yet at the same time they won't mention that they're foreigners because they're a leftist feminist organization. This is incredible stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Owen Lenihan is a great guy as well. I listen to a lot of his stuff, and absolutely, this sort of femicide, these sort of making up of these words, femicide and all this nonsense, racist and all these different buzzwords that they like to use on the left. This is to basically cancel the sort of narrative, that this is not actually what's happening. These are just buzzwords to manipulate you, all psychological warfare. And yeah, what happened to this woman was absolutely horrendous. I mean, the irony is unbelievable. We have a lady here, comes from America. She's Irish American. I would say she's pretty Irish. Okay, and a lot of the left Irish hate to say any Irish American with 100% DNA is not Irish. You have Conan O'Brien, 100% DNA from Limerick, but he's not Irish. Obviously, culturally he wouldn't be, but definitely ethnically. So you have all these people coming over, whether it is to work or seek asylum. I think it was to work maybe for her. I'm not really sure. She's embedded in the local community. She's actually, you would say, probably as Irish as, they always say this Sudanese man or this Somalian man, he's as Irish as the Irish themselves, or he's more Irish than the Irish themselves. It's complete comical. But this lady, you could almost argue, she kind of almost is as Irish. Like if she's, she's 100% DNA or whatever, 80% DNA Irish, extremely Irish. And she comes over here, she complete virtue signal. She's from New York. She probably loves Mandami, the mayor of New York City, and complete left-leaning, free Palestine, free all this stuff. She's wearing the scarf. She's going to all these protests. Then she meets this guy from an IPAS center. I mean, you can imagine this case is horrendous. And I was saying this today. She meets this guy from an IPAS center, doesn't know who he is. Okay, these guys are completely illegal, in my personal opinion. And she strikes a relationship with him. God knows how, maybe through Tinder, through the internet or through, in person. And she meets this guy. She only knows him for what, maybe 18 months? What is it? 16, 14 months, a year and a half since 2024, they said, summer. And then they get into one argument. He gets mad. He can't control this uncontrollable rage that we see in a lot of these people from the third world. And he ends up killing her, beating her to death. The mainstream news says she was killed, she was killed. No, she was brutally beaten in the head. You can imagine the scene. Seeing this would be so shocking. And then the daughter walks in and finds his body. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, this is just so horrific. And they don't even talk about it. They don't really care about this because really, I won't get too conspiratorial, but I think that they kind of almost want this. They don't give a shit. Why would they care? He comes into the country as well. We don't know where he came from, how he came here. They say he's from France. I mean, if this guy's from France, I'm the king of China, he came from France. Then now he's fled back to Turkey. Okay, so easy come, easy go. So he comes in within what, four days, a few days, then he leaves again. It's unreal. People just don't know how crazy the system is. And what I was saying today is, just to finish off here, like the worst case about this is the people that she was around, okay, the Irish people, because we like to hate on the illegal immigrants, and absolutely they're to blame. But the people that were around her family, and they might not have listened to her, maybe they did tell her, but they should have said to her, this guy is unchecked. This guy is a complete, God knows who. He could be ISIS. We don't know who the hell this guy is. He's coming here. He's only lived here for a year and a half. Could be from flipping God knows wherever. And he's coming here. He's in an IPAS center. And, you should be more cautious with this guy. And, being this kind of left-leaning lady or whatever, liberal lady, she completely trusts him with everything. And then she ends up getting kind of killed. It's like this touch of irony. Everybody's talking about that. It's horrific. I'm Christian. We don't want to see anybody die. But obviously this lady was very arrogant. Maybe she didn't want to listen to these people. I don't know the specifics of the case. I don't want to be commenting on someone who passed away. But it's just tragic, really. I mean, you know yourself. I'm sure you saw the story. This lady, Jamie Carney, the whole community loved her. She was in the community. This is small communities in Killarney. The most beautiful, idyllic place. I went to Killarney once. I thought I died. I went to heaven. This is the Shire. This is like heaven on earth. We have the most beautiful country in the world here in Ireland. And then it's like we have these murders for these third worlders. Like, what is going on, lads? And then as well, I don't know how this happened, but the daughter walked in, found the body. How did the daughter not hear what was happening? This sort of brutal beating to death. Maybe they had music playing or something. And then he ran out the door and the police were saying, we're so afraid. He had 12 hours head start. 12 hours head start. I mean, this guy could be in flipping God knows where. They said he went to Turkey. He could be already in Syria. 13 hours. I mean, that's the head start of a lifetime, and this is what it's gonna be. Maybe he might flee to a country where we can't extradite him. Okay, so, and they protect their own, these people from the third world, certain religions, I won't get too far into it, but they protect their own people, and then we'll never see the guy again, potentially we'll find him, and hopefully we do, but there is that slight chance that this guy just never gets found, and he rides off into the sunset, and he's good to go,
Yeah, it's horrible. And I mean, I was talking to a friend about this earlier, Chris, that like from my perspective, I suppose it was the late 90s, early 90s when I knew this type of stuff was probably coming down the tracks, because the United Nations was talking about, their first global compact on migration was 2002, and you could see they were already trying to put the idea out there, oh, we need, more immigrants because of the West is dying, pretty much, the birth rates and all labor, and the economy is crashing, the Marxist thing of, capitalism is collapsing, we need labor from the third world, all this stuff. So they were starting to lay the foundations back then, and certainly I think Sweden and Germany were two of the countries that were hit the first with this in a big way. And we saw this phenomenon of these lefty kind of women kind of almost virtue signaling, as you said. They're kind of showing off that I'm a good person. I'm not going to say no to this guy just because he's from the third world. He's just a person. We're all the same. And, they're kind of primed to ignore advice from people telling them otherwise. And I know that Paul Joseph Watson made a lot of videos about this, of kind of, was it FAFO or fuck around and find out sort of thing. Now, I don't want to mock anybody, but this is the tragedy of this situation. It's like there's an indoctrination problem here where people are not using their common sense. And I'm wondering, do you think there's going to be a point? I mean, everyone always says this. Is there going to be a point where a lot of people wake up, that prevents something like this happening again? But we've already had loads of these cases. So like, when is this going to stop is the argument.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know will it ever stop. And hopefully, this sort of posting about these videos and talking to people and telling people and educating people on what's happening, hopefully it eventually does get to the liberal elites and it does stop. But maybe as long as the money is flowing in from the EU, from the UN, it'll never stop, because we know this is a human trafficking situation. They go to the third world countries. These people are like plucked out of the jungle. They don't even know where they're going. If you go to Libya, and my family, very international, okay? They've lived everywhere, Libya, North Africa, the Middle East. I lived in the Middle East till I was 6 years old. I'm very familiar just even with the attitude of these people. These people wouldn't even know like where they're going. They just come to them and say, do you want to come here? And they're basically maybe taken in this sort of like new sort of slave trade. They're just taken from wherever, Libya, wherever. They're coming on boats as well, of course, to Europe from Libya. When Gaddafi got killed, that sort of flooded flipping Europe with it. Although he was a dictator and stuff, he did kind of keep that border from the people flowing into Europe. A lot of people report on that. But it's like, unless this money stops flowing for this. I saw a guy, what was that guy's name? You know better than me. He made like 230 million euro from the immigration into Ireland, and one Irishman, because he has all this like host of hotels. He has the hotels, he has all this stuff. He could be putting Irish people into the hotels, homeless Irish people, maybe women victims of domestic violence. Nope, he doesn't care about any of that. He wants to just flood the country with the third world. I mean, it's unreal stuff. And to see this, our own people doing this, I couldn't do it. I mean, I don't know how people live with themselves. I mean, the money, you couldn't do this to your own people. I don't understand, guys. And I'm not holier than thou by any stretch. But it's like, just selling out your nation like this is unreal stuff. They wouldn't do this if they were actually enclosed in their community, because these people that are making money from this human trafficking, mass immigration, they live in Spain. They're in the Tenerife, they're in flipping Dubai, partying it up with their millions. They don't even live here in Ireland. We, the people that middle class or, lower middle class, whatever you want to say, I didn't grow up rich by any stretch. We have to live around these people. We have to live around the flipping people coming from Somalia. These people will never see this. They will never see this stuff. They'll be in flipping either in places like Dalkey, which, is nice to visit, but there's no iPass center there. Or else they'll be overseas and they'll never even see it. They'll never even have to talk to Irish people, because Irish people would tell them, hey, why is John down the road? Why is he bringing in loads of people? He's driving the Bentley all of a sudden. He used to be a farmer. Now he's driving a Bentley, and he has all these people coming in. Why is he doing this to us? Like, we have to live around these people. What's going on? It'll never happen to them. But I just wanted to make that one final point. I can't believe that people around this lady didn't tell her about the dangers of these people. Killarney is beautiful. Maybe they did. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully somebody tells me that they did, somebody close to her. But it's like, I guarantee you that they probably didn't. That they probably were like, oh, it's okay, just go and be with whoever you like. And then this tragedy happens. It's crazy stuff. In a tight community, we would be telling people the dangers of other people. But nowadays, you can't tell anyone the dangers of anybody else because you're perceived as racist or whatever. And it's like, if the guy speaks English and he's here for 30 years, like we have in Galway, people from different countries, that's one thing in small, tiny amounts. But and they're actually in Galway. A lot of them are very enclosed into the community. We know everybody in Galway, but when they're in Dublin, in Cork, these are big, massive cities, and nobody knows each other. There's no community. There is no sort of warning people of other things, of dangers that could happen possibly. And then when you don't have that strict, that kind of social regulation from your friends, your family, this kind of bad shit happens,
Yeah, I was thinking as well, and maybe it's a factor that it's just the tragedy of the situation. I'm sure you've noticed, Chris, how with the mass immigration thing, and we've all seen the pattern, they tend to drop them in to more areas. There's been, the cities have been filling up. They're also sticking them out into rural areas. And those areas, traditionally, people are, there's the internet and there's the media and so on, but there's an argument there that the country or rural areas are a little bit slower to catch on to things in some ways. And you have this government agenda to bring in all these immigrants and stick the IPAS centres all around the place, in addition to commandeering tourist locations, hotels and such, like you mentioned. Do you think that's a factor as well, that people are being hit with this in rural areas and they might be not so politically engaged, don't really know what's going on, but all of a sudden they have a massive amount of foreign men being based in the area, which poses a risk to the communities? I mean, this has to be a factor, surely.
100%. I mean, it's probably the main factor. Like, people in the cities, they are very savvy. People from Dublin are street smart. They're very wise about what's going on. They've been around people. They're around, thousands of people every single day. They know what's happening. There's great street reporters that capture videos, and if they capture too much, they put them in prison. Now this is what the police are doing, the Gardaí are doing, this is what the Irish government is doing, just showing people on camera, recording somebody, which they're already recorded on public CCTV. Now if you record them on your phone, now you get to go to prison. It's unbelievable. But definitely these rural areas, like in Galway, in a local hotel next to me, beautiful hotel, I used to go with my family to have food and just relax and hang out with each other. Beautiful, nice, big hotel. For the last 6 years, has been overtaken by, I believe it was Ukrainians, they said, in the beginning, and now it's all turned into Somalians. So they're just kind of doing this bait and switch. Okay, it's okay, families from Ukraine are coming, and then it's like, okay, military-aged warriors, soldiers are coming from Somalia. They're doing this kind of switch up then 6 years down the line, 5 years down the line. And they said as well at the beginning, well, they're only staying here for 3 months. And as my friend Alan Sweeney said, like hell, and my friend, he lives beside me, like hell, they're only staying for 3 months. Who believes this? Like, this is nonsense, guys. In Ukraine, their average wage is like 300 euro per month. Everybody knows this is one of the poorest countries in the geographical location of Europe. So it's like, it's one of the poorest countries. They're not going to stay here. They're getting 250 euro. They're getting the same amount within a week. They're getting more for having kids. So it's just a disaster. This education, as you said, Emmett, perfectly, is one of the reasons why these people are being snuck in the middle of the night. Everything is just so, under the cover of darkness. It's so seedy. It's so, what would you even call it? Recluse. Like, everyone's doing everything that's hidden from the public eye. And this is what we see. This is, coming in the middle of the night in big buses. And it's like, nobody's to blame. They're saying, who pays these bus drivers? Who does it? Who's paying for the hotel? It all leads back then to the government then bringing in this human trafficking. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. There's clearly there's an agenda, and it's very subversive and sneaky, and the tactics you talked about of bringing people in at night, and even in the UK as well, you had incidents where you'd have bus loads of immigrants being brought into a certain location. The right wing find out about it, but the lefties do as well, and you got these riots. So you got the system in alliance with the political left, who are more emotion based in their thinking, and it's almost like they've refined their tactics, because they were kind of developed their tactics in Germany and Sweden, and then things took a little bit longer to kind of hit Ireland. And it's really obviously there's nothing political or democratic about any of this. Like, people didn't vote for this, and we've known that for quite a while. But you see, this tweet here from Owen, this is the one I was looking for. So it was kind of related to the Aisling Murphy. Earlier he replied to me and said it was like an Aisling Murphy 2.0. So what they do is, if they can't completely hide something, they spin it So if they can't suppress the story, they spin it into something else. And his tweet here says, over the coming days, when you see NGO figures, particularly from the Women's Council and Women's Aid, talk about femicide and misogyny in Ireland in a bid to shift the blame from Jamie Carney's murder away from the immigration policy, please remember and remind those near to you that not a single Irish man is a suspect in the 7 murders of women committed in Ireland this year. Ireland doesn't have a misogyny problem. Ireland has a violent immigrant problem. That's incredible. Couldn't have said it better myself. It's like the way they spin stuff, and it's mad. I noticed the same pattern in Sweden, and I had a few examples in my book as well of you have an immigrant, same old story. And like in Sweden, it was really mental. It was like the lefty liberal women over there were bringing immigrants, like adopting them like they were a dog or something, bringing them into the house, and everything's fine for a while, and then they just, like you said or whatever, there's like a switch, and they become violent and kill them or rape them. And the thing is that the feminist groups, they say they're for women's safety and women's rights, but on this issue they're not going to address that. It's extraordinary. It's almost like they're supposed to be for the safety of women, but on this particular issue they just go silent. I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. This is the reality, and we have facts, we have statistics, but they don't want to hear about that. They just want to see that, this is and they actually don't want to accept reality, and the reality is hard to accept sometimes. People don't want to accept reality. They don't want to accept that they're living in a shit situation. So we'll just kind of keep it going, but we'll target some area that we can kind of maybe get some brownie points on. And really, reality, I mean, this is clearly exactly what's happening. Dr. Owen Lenihan is talking about it, and it's crazy. And we're heading in the same way as the UK. You mentioned the UK. The UK is a disaster. That country is one of the worst countries I've ever been to. I never want to go back there ever again. It's a disaster. They put you in prison at the rate of 13,000 people per year when it comes to posting on the social media. While they should be focusing on people that are beheading people or killing people, or the 30 stabbings a day that they have in their gangland violence, they focus on people talking about it. Complete no freedom of speech, no freedoms whatsoever. I mean, this was one of the greatest countries, and this is coming from an Irishman now. This is one of the greatest countries in the world. You can't argue. The British Empire was flipping massive. They flipping ruled everything. Now all of a sudden, they're putting people in prison for talking about things that are happening to their people. It's crazy. This was one of the biggest points of contention. It was hilarious to see. All my comment section was saying, Chris, this is unbelievable. We don't even care about the North anymore because it's 90% flipping immigrants in the North and South. What are we even retaining anymore? 30 years ago, people cared about getting the North back. Now all my comments are saying, Chris, we don't even want this shit. Why would we even want this if it's going to be just filled up with flipping third worlders? I mean, it makes sense to me. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a good point. The left kneecap as well, these sort of Northern Irish rappers, or these Irish rappers, I suppose, they're Irish, but they always kind of dangle this sort of the North, we're going to get the 6 counties back. And this is just a complete straw man argument. Who even wants the 6 counties? It's flipping going to be filled with people that are beheading us from the Sudan. I mean, this is crazy. If it was filled up with Irish people, like our own or whatever, then yeah, in some ways, but it's just crazy that what's happened now is insane. And people really need to start waking up to this, and then you still see some people on the left are like, yeah, we're gonna, and there's people on the left that are like left-wing patriots as well. They would say we want the North back and all this stuff. That ship has sailed. This is completely a non-talking point anymore. I mean, if we get the North back, what does it even matter if it's just filled up with people from the Sudan that are beheading people? If it's filled up with people from Somalia, from Afghanistan, I mean, at this point, it's just completely crazy to even be bringing up these points. We have to look at the what's actually happening, the huge picture here. And people may get upset about that, but that is the reality,
Yeah, that in total agreement, man, about that stuff about the North. I mean, I often focus in on not what people tell you they are sometimes, what their beliefs are, the way they talk, the kind of stuff they say gives away their ideology. So I remember I made a silly video taking the piss out of the ICA a while ago because they were, a few guys who put on masks saying, we're going to, save the Republic and the British and all this stuff. So I did my own version. I just riffed into a hand recorder, with the volume down, watching the video, and did my own version. Americans were sending me off, congrats, up the ICA, save your country. And I'm going, oh my God, they fell for it. It's just a joke. But I mean, say with Kneecap, it's with Kneecap, those guys are full on, the lefty side of Republican. They're talking about United Ireland, and they'll say all the usual stuff like we need solidarity, 32 county republic, let's free the North, but they'll also say free Palestine, and they'll give you other clues that they're kind of leftist, and they kind of confuse people. But like you said, people have to prioritize when it comes to the North. I mean, first of all, I know it's a huge subject, but me personally, I wouldn't want things to go back to the way they were, first of all. And I think that people on different sides of the community should hopefully understand this point. The real problem nowadays is this globalist agenda, not the British, or kind of get stuck in the past. And I mean, even with this, sorry, I'll switch views here. The one with the incident after the kind of beheading and then the violence, and we had the riots up in the North and so on. I mean, interesting, a friend of mine told me that it was actually people from the loyalist communities were the ones who kicked off the riots, because as messed up as this sounds, a lot of people on the nationalist side, the Irish Republican nationalist side, some of them are brainwashed with lefty thinking, and Sinn Féin is telling them not to protest the instant. The riots were coming from the loyalist side. I mean, the whole thing's just a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, like, it's just crazy. And of course, like, we don't want to see massive violence. That's absolutely, of course, that's crazy. Some people advocating for that and all this craziness. But, you have people like Kneecap that are just completely brainwashing the youth as well. I hear some people, I love their music, love this because it's in Irish. This is sort of like this is sort of the low bar that we have here for like patriotism in Ireland. If you can speak Irish, if you have an Irish accent, then like you must be like IRA, you must be this big patriot of the country or whatever, ready to flip and die for your. It was complete nonsense. We had Kneecap last year. They cancelled with 600 other people. Apparently, they said there was 600 signatures. Christy Moore, all these people. They cancelled this Misha Era festival. Misha Era was a festival that was hosted, I believe, by Stephen and another lady in Castlebar. I think it got moved around a few times, and I was supposed to go to it as well, but I didn't have the time to make it. But beautiful, amazing festival. Something my dad would love. Like, obviously, that's another one of the things that, that they say now. You have to be pro GA, pro this. The GA is one of the most corrupt things in the world now. We see the leaders. I see my friends, they're working out every day at the pitch. They're strong, big, fit, guys, Irish guys. That's amazing to see. But what's not amazing to see is people praying in Croke Park. I mean, this is a joke. This is a complete joke. This is an invasion. This is a takeover, the way I see it. And people need to wake up to that. They don't want to say anything. Oh my God, no, they can just pray there. Well, we wouldn't hold mass in like this king in a King Saudi in a Saudi Arabian stadium. Okay, because in my opinion, Croke Park is as Irish as it gets. That's quintessential Irishness. We wouldn't hold mass in their stadiums. It's not a religious ground, but it is definitely a quintessential Irish thing. It's an Irish building. So, this sort of idea that that Kneecap are good and they're like pro-patriot Irish people, and they're trying to cancel people like John Waters and these patriots of Ireland speaking at this event. This Misha Era Festival was just an event to promote Irishness. I don't even think there were people there speaking about conspiracy theories, the stuff that I like. There wasn't even people there that were even at all fringe in any respect. They were just talking about stuff, like traditional music, beautiful Irish culture and heritage. That was it. Telling poems of the Banshee, stuff I used to listen to in primary school. Oh, the Banshee, I was 9 years old, 7 years old, listening to all these beautiful fairy tales and stories, old Irish stories. They don't want this. They want to just destroy the culture. They're, in my personal opinion, I have no evidence for this at all, but I think they're paid to do this. Christy Moore, I thought he was an Irish guy. Aren't these people supposed to be pushing Irishness? Like, what aspects are they pushing? They're pushing their left-wing globalist agenda. It's crazy. It's absolute madness what's happened. That Misha Era Festival, I'm sure you saw it or you went to it, or even spoke at it. It would be great to see you speak at it as well, Emmett. But they're trying to cancel these things. They said they got 600 signatures. I think they're lying about that as well. 600 signatures to cancel a traditional Irish event. It's just insane. What has happened to this place? I mean, a lot of their stuff that you're showing here as well is just completely. It's not good. I'm a music reactor as well. I reacted to some of their songs. I didn't find them interesting whatsoever. It was fun that they're in Irish, but apart from that, there was just no rhyme or reason or any sort of actual any sort of like emotional attachment to this. I really just don't see. I see it as kind of almost like a facade now at this point. They're trying to cancel traditional Irish events. It's insane that are taking place in the Republic. It's like, what's happened here? This is wild.
Yeah, it's really strange, and imagine trying to like because obviously both of us deal with a lot of people, say Irish Americans or just American patriots. Obviously there's a massive audience there if you're English speaking content creators, which we are, and they ask us about what's happening in Ireland. Try to explain to them what NECAP are. Well, these guys are a little bit fucked up. Like they're kind of like a hip hop band, but one of them wears a balaclava, which is like the IRA, which is kind of a little bit Marxist, but also not in other ways. There's lots. You have to explain the history of the IRA, and then you have to talk about Irish culture. And like you said, like the Mish Era Festival, I think it was Suzanne Delaney, and I can't remember a fella's name. You got it right earlier. They've got a YouTube channel called Irish Inquiry, I think. They do like current affairs-y stuff for any Americans watching. And I mean, the festival you describe, exactly right. It was like a cultural event about Irish culture. I had that kind of music. I think that's what they were going for. I didn't actually attend it, but I knew about it. And I mean, the idea that these idiots who come along with their bullshit music and their stupid tropes and appealing to the lefty market, being propped up by the system as being fake rebels, and now they're actually destroying real Irish content is just despicable. Yes. It's like the communist thing of when they want to destroy something, they'll go after it, but they'd also give you like a fake alternative to drag people over to that. And they've used it specifically to target the young in Ireland, to push them, like, everything gets taken over by the woke stuff. So whether it's entertainment or education, everybody's kind of pushed towards that road. And I mean, I don't know about, say, your audience spread in terms of its age, Chris, but I'm sure like a lot of the younger ones in particular would be kind of vulnerable to these types of idiots. What do you think?
Absolutely, and you said it perfectly there. Like I couldn't have said it more perfect myself. You have this kind of idea that they're like this rebel group, and they're pushing back against the establishment. They are literally the establishment. They're paid. They're signed to these big labels. They're paid. They're not independent whatsoever. I mean, it's insane. Like, and you can be independent. Like I see people even like, and this is one of my main aspects that I go after people on YouTube as well, is social media influencers. This is something that literally nobody is talking about. Very few people are talking about this in Ireland. Nobody really cares so much about the mainstream media anymore. If you're under 30, let's say, you're maybe even under 20, you don't really listen to the mainstream news like RT News. You're not sitting down to watch the 6 p.m. news. You're not doing that, right? So what you are doing is you're watching people like Garen Noon. You're watching people like the Guinness Guru. You're watching people like all these different people. I can talk endlessly about them. And I've made videos on all these people. And what you have in these people are, they're not paid directly. And this is kind of far out. People need to kind of like really stay with me when I talk about this stuff, because it's pretty complex actually for me to understand. But these huge companies like Coca-Cola, let's say they come in and all these Irish influencers are signed with a marketing agency. Some of them are called, like, I can't even off the top of my head, like marketing agencies, where they basically get this money. They get this big sum of money, 100,000 from Coca-Cola, and they put it into a pool, and then they divide that. The marketing agency takes that money and divides it out to all these influencers. Well, if you're like Garen Noon and you come online and you start saying that, we know as a fact, and he said it as a fact, that immigration is bad, okay? Then he said specifically in a news talk, which I reacted to, I can remember verbatim what he said, all my sponsorships got taken away, okay? Why is that? I thought Garen Noon and all these people can say what they want. You had Keelty on TV saying we're a free speech country, you can say what you want in this country. Well, apparently if you talk about immigration and you're Garen Noon, you get every single one of your sponsors taken away. And then he said, I apologize. And slowly he said, I got every single one of my sponsorships back. Now, let me ask you, Emmett, how can you take back a statement like, because you can take back statements, how can you take back a statement that says everybody in this country knows there's a problem with immigration, the government know? How can you take back a statement like that? It's unbelievable. You can't take a statement like that back.
Yeah, that thing of what you're describing, that coercion of like the entertainment industry, look, we'll go straight for the jugular here. And I mean, you know, any non-Irish people, we apologise in advance for the language we're going to use here, but they're essentially like whores for the system. They made themselves into whores for fame and money, and that makes them wide open to being coerced to go along with these agendas, and they just become mouthpieces for the system. And I mean, I noticed things were kind of going downhill for years anyway, but then when I saw Kneecap and I saw these fucking idiots, like one of the guys, like he was a teacher or whatever, and he had this balaclava on, the two of them come, you know, the asked them to get the British out, and all this, and the British government, and the mask, and I'm like, Jesus, the wheels have really come off the wagon here when the guy literally has a balaclava on his head. You can't get any more obvious than that. But yeah, that coercion factor is a big thing, and I know this is kind of off topic, but they're even using it with the bigger picture stuff like ESG, environmental social governance. So you've got, on a lower level, you got people trying to be famous, being the performers and celebrities pushed into this, but you also got companies being pushed into it too. And then we saw the whole thing with Dylan Mulvaney, they push it so far and then they get found out. So they got this tranny guy for Budweiser and eventually hit them in the pocket. So maybe that's the way to deal with companies, is people not buying into this. But there's so much trash out there. How do you stop the youth of today financially throwing their money at, kneecapping groups like that? I mean, kids don't really care about politics and ideology. I mean, how can you stop this sort of stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, it is tough to stop that, and that's kind of that's the reality. These people will never stop because until the money gets cut off. But the ironic thing is, at the time when Gary Noon got cancelled, let's say, that's about the biggest cancellation we've ever seen in Ireland, because he went away for a week, he hid for a week. He said he didn't leave the house for 10 days. I literally said that this guy has agoraphobia or something. His life is super public, but he's the biggest influencer in Ireland. He's the biggest influencer that Ireland has ever seen. So we know so much about him. And he hid, for a week, had bad mental health problems. And that's sad to see. This is what they did. Now, the Irish people didn't do that to him. Understand? We didn't give this guy bad mental health or the fact that he didn't want to leave for a week. I guarantee you, if he left his house that week, he would get high fives and he would get flipping pints and he would get flipping love from the women for speaking up for the Irish people. He wouldn't have got this. Was done all specifically by the Irish government, by his marketing agency. He got all his money taken away. But at that time, he could have easily went independent. I know, I'm running the numbers all the time on this stuff. I know it absolutely. He was massive. This guy, I mean, he still is. He's the biggest guy in the country by 10 times. He could have easily, even just from his YouTube channel, which is not giving you much money at all, you could have easily, from the views that he's getting, from the pull that he gets, he could have easily went independent and just said, I'm not taking any more sponsorships, but I have my freedom of speech and I can say what I want. Instead, unfortunately, I don't want to say it, but he cucked up. He got back in the cuck chair and said, "Okay, that's it now. I have to take this. I have to basically censor myself, and that's it." And I couldn't live with myself, to be honest. I like my freedom of speech too much. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I have to be able to say what I want, and anything I want. And he could have easily went independent. I said that, and he didn't. He started taking the money back again. It's like, this could have easily been reversed, where he could have easily just said, I think what I think, and everyone should piss off. And I bet he actually would have got his sponsorships back. He would have got a few back, at least. This guy's so massive. It's not like, just talking a little on certain topics, just everything gets the rug pulled. But I think it's because the Irish marketing agencies pulled the rug. I don't think it was because international brands, like some of these international brands in America, they're extremely right-leaning. I mean, there's massive brands in America that are only sponsoring right-leaning people, or, anything like that, supplement brands or anything like that. And he could have easily got sponsorships from them easily if he just messaged them or reached out to them. But instead, he's taking only Irish sponsorships, it seems like, from these marketing agencies. So it's just a catch-22. You can't speak your mind here if you're a public figure. And it's funny when you say when you started to notice it. The minute I really noticed it, it was way before Gary Noon. This guy, I believe his name is Protein Bar. He's like a TikToker. I didn't know anything about this guy at all. He's like a gym guy as well. He loves the gym. He loves the fitness. That was great to see. I love to see young Irish men, really Irish guys pushing fitness and health. He starts coming on the Lad Bible Ireland, which is, sort of a Instagram, YouTube thing. It's like a big sponsorship page, big, huge page, originating actually from England. So it's British sponsorship. And he comes on and he starts saying, we should restrict freedom of speech. There should be hate speech laws. I'm thinking, you're talking about protein bars, getting healthy, getting muscles. What the hell has that got to do with anything? It's just like, how, obviously the guy's getting paid for this. I'm like, dude, like there's no line there. Like, and this is unreal stuff. This is unbelievable stuff. You've never seen anything. And people like are not shocked by this. I don't know how they're not shocked. They're like, oh, protein bar, he's a great guy. But like, yeah, I agree that there should be hate speech laws, and no idea, no idea that hate speech laws, obviously, and then the backlash was massive. No idea that any kind of restriction of hate speech laws could just mean a tidal wave of people going to prison for all sorts of different things. And they still brought in the hate law, but I believe they left the hate speech stipend, the little part, out of it as well. So crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's like you're saying, it's funny, like, the 1 minute someone's making videos about cooking and the next minute they turn around and go, oh, you know what also is good to make for your lunch? That reminds me, capitalism is evil. And off they go into a tangent. You're kind of like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, Western civilization is bad. How did they shoehorn that into a video or whatever, a fitness video or something? I mean, the whole thing is just very predictable now. I kind of talked about myself that like, that's why I kind of focus on the cultural or ideological stuff, because the education system, as we know, has been pushing out a lot of woke stuff and so on, that you're going to get, particularly the younger generations, are going to be more primed to go along with this stuff. The culture has been changing. That's why I get dragged into conversations about politics a lot. Of course, that's a big part of the anti-globalist agenda. But until people start looking at the cultural stuff, I don't think people can just vote their way out of this. I think that a lot of this is like an ideological problem as well. Noticing the same pattern in a lot of Western countries. People have to think about the way the youth in particular are looking at society. If they're being just pummeled with this stuff constantly and the parents are not guiding them in the right direction, I think things can go awry very easily. What do you think?
Absolutely, the culture is massive. Even when I'm making these videos, rap videos and stuff, people will say, well, that's not very conservative. These guys are talking about shooting each other or whatever. And of course, I've never shot anyone or done any crime like that. So there's ways to have this culture where it's imaginative, it's performative. A lot of these rappers or performers, like, in the USA and the UK, they just talk a lot of shit, to be blunt. They're talking a lot of nonsense, but it sounds good on the actual album. It sounds good on the music. But, a lot of people also want to be entertained. Politics isn't really entertaining to a lot of people, so they can't really see that sort of that attraction. But, people will say, Chris, well, why didn't you go from music into politics? But the thing is, guys, I talked about politics like a year into my YouTube channel, and I slowly talked about it more and more. Okay, it wasn't, and I still make music videos, and I still actually really do like making music videos, but it's not like this guy, Protein Bar, not to single him out, but it was just such an insane thing to see that never talked about politics ever on his channel, ever, never talked about anything ever, all of a sudden gets paid and then just gets, to pushing this sort of hate speech law. It was one of the most egregious acts of just tyranny and payment and just usury I've ever seen in my life. So, even trying to find, and he doesn't even have like a big YouTube channel. It's like more of like, he's like an Instagram, a TikToker. So it's like, it's more like this really, really heavily created message. But yeah, definitely the culture is going to be one thing to try and change people, because even for me, I've said it before, I'm not particularly very culturally, like I don't play GA, I don't listen to traditional music too much, although I do love those things on nights out and stuff like that. Because I've lived here my whole life, my dad is Irish, I'm very ingrained in culture in other ways. You don't have to be particularly, and this is what the youth think, oh, I have to be listening to my granddad's music and I have to, be very like old school, old style to be conservative. And that's not it at all, guys. I'm not like that at all, in fact. But I understand there's huge things like the migration, like the pushing of LGTB, like the pushing of all these radical left-wing ideas, liberal ideas from the liberal elites, to now the difference between conservatism. I still love all the music. That's crazy. I still love Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out, PlayStation games. I still love all this stuff. You don't have to be this boring, elderly man to be conservative and push these ideas to help your country. This is more patriotism. This is more nationalism rather than conservatism, let's say.
That's a great point, and actually I've thought about that myself recently as well, because I dealing with people, obviously I talk to patriots all across the world because my work applies internationally, but obviously I'm Irish and Ireland is my main priority. I mostly talk to Irish patriots, and there is that sentiment of people on the right wing thinking that they need to, you know, drape themselves in the Irish flag. They feel guilty that they can't speak Irish and stuff like that. And you know, it's like they think they're doing something wrong. And I'm like, well, don't put pressure on yourself too much. I mean, you know, this globalist agenda is going to take a lot more than like a couple of fuckle and wearing the flag to turn it around. Those aren't bad things. You should be proud of your culture, but it's going to take a lot more than that. I mean, I think that I know this is kind of getting you into the politics here, Chris, but I mean, I think that the big issue, what is the big problem in Ireland? Everyone's been describing the effects of this globalist agenda on Ireland for ages. We all know there's too many foreigners, the crime that comes with it, the trans in the schools, you know, the climate change movement, the EU directives, hate speech, hate crime. We're always describing the effects and so on, but it's like, well, what can we do about it? And I think, well, the political right needs to be organised, and how do we do that? And then people throw all these different ideas into the mix then, and that's where some go down that road of, well, you know, a friend of mine was talking about on a space recently, you know, a person over there is more of a patriot, someone else is more of a patriot than me because they're talking about 1916 all the time. I'm like, okay, I understand you want to do that. If you want inspiration from those people, or the Michael Collins era, or whatever, or read Pádraig Pearse, you enjoy that. Good for you. I don't need any more inspiration. And I think maybe it's a confidence problem, because I'm alive today. I don't feel like I need to consult someone who died 100 years ago to figure out the world today. That's not an ego thing. I just feel confident in what I can do. Am I mental here? Or what do you think?
No, 100%. That's so perfectly put. So perfectly put. It almost feels like, to me, like, and I've seen this with my local people in my local village as well. I won't go into too specifics, but it almost seems like, because I don't play GA, because I don't really super integrate myself into some parts of the community in my local aspect, or maybe on a wider aspect, then I'm not as Irish, or I'm not like able to talk about more right-leaning politics. So that's complete nonsense. You know, yeah, like you said, talking about the politics from 1916 and stuff, that's great and everything, but this is old. You know, we need to start getting super modern and modernized with the idea. And this is the media takeover. This is, you know, YouTube channels, Instagram, your big, great X channel, you know, all these different channels are coming in and coming through, and this is going to help push it. You know, because one person's more Irish than the next person, it's almost like, you know, you can never be Irish enough. This is what the left does to us. I don't think on the right we really do it to each other, because I'm the most laid back, open guy. You know, if you want to be talking about this kind of stuff, even with like the ethno-nationalism, we can talk about that, super controversial. That I do agree to that to a point, but I guess there's going to be some people that maybe aren't, but they're super agree on like every single topic. I think more policy in this, you know, in small amounts of people, not massive amounts, like, you know, this mass immigration, that can help as well. You know, like I did an interview with Tyan Mercer, and this guy just gets just so much hate. It's unbelievable. Maybe he doesn't see it or whatever, but they're like, we can't have this guy. It's like, the guy is not trying to even run for office. He's trying to just help in some aspects. What the hell does he need all this aggro for? If he's trying to help push the movement, if he's trying to help different people that are here in Ireland, I think that's a good thing. Now, do I think that we should have people from Somalia in government? No, clearly not. That's absolutely insane, right? Or someone like let's talk about Helen Ogbu. Okay, she's from Nigeria. She just got selected. She didn't get elected. She got selected because she gave over her 4,000 votes to Sean Kine in the Galway West election. Do we think that, you know, we should have just streams of Helen Ogbu's? No, clearly not. Nobody thinks that. I mean, it's just insane. If she got elected, that would be one thing. You know, we could talk about that. You know, there is that democratic side. We can also talk about the Constitution. You know, if you have a passport, if you have a citizenship, if you're very culturally Irish, you know, at what point do you become even Irish? Like, you know, my dad's Irish, you know, but I wasn't born here. So the way they say, oh, this guy's foreign born, but clearly I'm Irish, okay? But then they say, well, you're not born here, so, you know, we're going to add you to this list of foreign born people. But they don't even talk about the ethnicity of these foreign born people. Like, there could be 50, 60% of Galway, which I guarantee it's like 70% of Galway is foreign ethnicity. But they don't even want to talk about this or touch on this kind of stuff. So there is this kind of line. It's like, you know, we can definitely help you don't have to be super, like, you don't have to be like a farmer, you know, that speaks fluent Irish. Like my one of my greatest friends I've known since I was 6 years old, 7 years old. His dad is from the Iron Islands. You know, this guy is Ireland. You know, he's like, you know, met like my dad. But maybe not everyone is like that. Maybe not everyone is super, you know, kúpla fucka. Like, I've learned Irish for 12 years, but could I have a conversation with you? Like, I'd understand a few words, but it would be, you know, it's this idea. And then the left are saying, well, if you don't speak fluent Irish, you're not Irish. And, you know, you're supposed to be this patriotic guy. I never claimed that I was any of those things. Like, I was super cultured Irish, not at all. But I know that we should be helping put the Irish people first, always. And we should be putting this first. And this is my argument. I'll just end you on this one for this point. Like, where I grew up was like heaven. We have a small little village. We had the primary school. We had the church. We had, you know, the local shop or whatever. Beautiful, idyllic scenery, like the Americans would describe as like a suburb. You know, like certain YouTubers in America describe like the white picket fence. You know, beautiful family and the black Labrador, the beautiful dog. You know, you have the beautiful family. You know, this is the kind of society that we want to keep. This Western society that's good. We don't want to be taking women out of the Constitution like flipping Leo Varadkar's trying to do. We don't want to be destroying the family unit. We don't want to be destroying Irish culture. Irish culture doesn't mean that you have to speak fluent Irish, but it does mean we have to keep the standards of living. You know, are we going to bring in Somalian brain surgeons, or are we going to have locals and people that are educated and well-spoken and that are professional in this country running things? Or are we just going to have a free-for-all like in Pakistan? You know, they're throwing flipping the rubbish off the train. You know, I don't want to live in a society like that. I want to live in a beautiful, kind, caring, nice society. Can we party and go crazy? Yeah, absolutely. You can party and, you know, drink. And I love having a few pints with the lads, okay? But it's not going to be every day. This isn't going to be a crazy society that we want to live in. We want to have a nice society for our kids to grow up in, you know? And I'm only 30. Like, I speak about that. I think about that as well now. Maybe when I was younger, 20, I didn't think about that. I thought, oh, you know, the music. But I never thought the music was real life. But some people do think this crazy rap music or this crazy shit is real life in the US, especially. They're shooting each other in gangs and they're stabbing each other in the UK. And that culture is slowly coming to Ireland. You know, and then they kind of blame the music. This is what the governments do. They blame Eminem. They blame the music. They blame South Park. They blame this. And it's like this, you're attacking the wrong thing. You know, you need to focus on the culture of the people. Like, how do the people act? I listen to crazy shit, but I don't do this nonsense. You know, this is to hype me up for the gym, or, you know, it's a fuel to do something, to do work. But people don't get that. You know, there's this lost culture along the way. So, you know, I'll let you take the floor there.
Yeah, there's so many great points, but there's definitely that scapegoating issue where when things start going wrong in the society, and people who have agendas or they're just stupid or ignorant will kind of assign blame in the wrong directions. But clearly across the world in Western nations, you've got this, you know, clash of cultures. Things are degrading. Like, it's obvious the European Union experiment is failing, but they're desperately trying to hold on to it because they're fanatics. And there's so many other things you mentioned as well about the ethno stuff. I agree. I mean, you look at, say, like, I always think to myself, Chris, looking at a Western nation, clearly the right wing being organised is the priority. So anything that doesn't help that is part of the problem, in a way, works against it. So it has to be, like, you know, I've been saying it for years that, like, the right wing needs to get itself organised either in a single group or a small coalition of groups that work well together, and anything else is secondary to that. But it's getting people to work together. And then we're back to people's beliefs again. I've been saying this till I was blue in the face, that if everyone has different ideas about what the solution is, they don't want to work together. And they don't want to work together, you end up with the fracturing and the splintering of groups, and then everyone is small and weak. You can't make a difference, and the system just rolls on. It's an absolute mess. And looking at the American situation, they're already like a multi-ethnic society. So the solution for them is to ally under the flag and to be American patriots and to acknowledge that, you know, mass immigration is a problem and so on, but there's no need to bang the race drum too hard, you know. And I think we kind of take from that, because in Ireland we have the splitting. Some people heavily focus on race and they think anyone does the same thing is not a real patriot. Like we talked about the culture thing. If you don't speak Irish, play Gaelic sports, have an Irish name, you're not 100% patriotic. It's like, for fuck's sake, you just alienated half the country, you know. I mean, I went to it's ridiculous. I mean, I went to a primary school Irish primary school. I learned to speak Irish because I was always getting shouted at because I was a nightmare jumping around the place. Teachers giving out to you in Irish. Eventually it goes in there and you go, right, I get it. But then you forget some of it and stuff. And there was even clips of poor Philip Dwyer was caught once with his pants down. He's very prolific, good at what he does, going around all the iPass centres. He was, confronted by a bunch of lefties. One of them was, I think he was mixed race or 100% not Irish, but he spoke Irish, and he started, on to able to kind Gaeilge to Phil, and Phil's going, I don't know, going red, and he was kind of caught and stuff. But the thing is, talk about how mad they are going to all that effort to learn a language just to prove a point that doesn't make sense, because the Marxist leftist camp like to pretend to be patriots to get away with their agenda. So it didn't mean anything. I like, what an idiot, like learning a whole language that has no practical use unless you go to the Aran Islands. But he's a lefty, so he's not learning it because he's proud of Irish culture. He's doing it to embarrass Philip Dwyer. It's just stupid. The whole thing, it's fake. It's ridiculous.
It's madness, and they're trying to discredit people like Philip Dwyer. Philip Dwyer is one of the biggest patriots in the group, and I would never, just talking about our own side as well, like I would never try and discourage people. Like, we have spats on X and stuff just with, minor creators and stuff, and just joking around, and it's all good. I don't want to see these sort of prolonged, sort of beefs, you call them, or prolonged wars with people on our own side. I'm very happy to take a back seat. I never want to be, and I'm not taking a front seat in any aspect as is, with like John Waters and these people, absolutely not. But I'm saying if there ever was a prominent figure in the politics, like if we had a sort of a Trump-esque character, and obviously I don't agree with everything Trump does, absolutely not. But I'm saying if we had a character like that, if we had someone to lead the show, I'd be fully against them. And there kind of is now. There are people emerging like the National Party and these different people, but the sort of fracturing of people, I never got that. As soon as I entered this like a few years ago, I just saw a lot of people being fractured, and I think people should just look past that. If there's a problem with someone personally, then you address that. But kind of this kind of idea that you're like trying to bring down parties or fighting each other, you're not as Irish as me, and this guy doesn't speak like this, or maybe just like trivial things like this guy insulted me once in a pub. It's like we need to start being like looking past these things, and that's masculinity. Masculinity is laid back, it's peaceful, it's relaxing. Fighting with guys because they said something, it just, to me, just seems like such a non-issue. And the left will take this and they'll run with that, and they'll use that to discredit people. They'll use that to manipulate us and trying to infiltrate the group. But I've heard people on the left and in the left wing saying in Galway, a lot of my friends, from different political backgrounds, they would say, that's the one thing that the right does have. They have more of a unity. But maybe I would look at it sometimes like, I think more of the left have unity. So I think maybe we do have great unity on the right. We just need to kind of keep pushing forward with that, to a certain extent.
Yeah, great points. I mean, it's really the main thing I've been concerned about, because I know full well if I say wanted to have a more more of a following on X, I could just, if I start focusing on, oh look, there's like immigrant crime and stuff like that, I know I could get a bigger following. It's kind of controversial because people have misunderstood me on this. It's like I'm not interested in discussing the effects anymore of what's going on. I want to kind of focus on how can we fix the solution, and sometimes people don't want to address that because it can drive you mental. It's so much easier to keep going the way we were going and talk about, we need to do something, let's have more street protests and all. I'm like, I'm working on the equation. Like, what can we do? It drives you mental, because I actually a friend of mine, Keith, he's got a YouTube channel, Nuada. He makes some great philosophical content. He's a great mind. He made a great point saying us Irish are very, the Celtic genes are very tuned to romanticism and creativity and poetry and stuff. Maybe we're not so good at the left brain stuff of, technical, organizational, logical, arguably, you know what I mean? So it's not good for team building, and we do have tendencies to the drama and ripping the backs off each other and splitting into groups I mean, it's terrible for team building. It really is. How do you fix that? How do you square that circle? So I mean, that's why in so many ways, I don't get all doom and gloom on you and stuff and leave the interview depressed, but like I've I kind of feel at times I feel like it's good to detach from from the Irish scene sometimes, because this has been going on for years, particularly when if you've been doing this a long time and fully alert to what's going on. It can drive you mental. And we mentioned Owen Lennon earlier. He did say that. I made a point about this fracturing or toxic elements within the right wing in Ireland, and he made a post saying he stopped years ago being involved in it very directly because of this kind of shit. You know, it's tricky. It's very frustrating, and not everyone is the same. Like we talked about the cultural thing earlier. Talking about the culture, protecting the culture is great, but yet the problem remains what I said of getting the political right organized, and that's my kind of take on it. Anyway. You know?
Absolutely. I definitely, because even like I would post some interviews and then people would just like stop following you. I can immediately see like big followers would stop following me. I don't even care about that. I don't mind, because I'm trying to get my point across, but I'm not the kind of guy to be like the solo guy. I'm trying to run the show. I really am the team player here. I understand this is a massive team element and we need numbers. Listening to a great guy, he organized a lot of these protests. I went to one, I believe, in Athlone last year, and I forget his name now, but it'll come back to me. But he was saying in an interview on the James Conway podcast, he said, you know, we need the numbers. This idea that we have true nationalist patriots, there's probably about 3 or 4 or 5 of those in the whole country. Let's be honest. He said, we need this numbers group, you know, and the left just take anyone, like, and that's kind of, we shouldn't just take anyone. We should be selective, but we definitely have to increase the numbers here, because Ireland is such a small country, and that's hopefully what we're doing with the media. You know, that's hopefully what I'm trying to do, is push the numbers game, because numbers is how you win. You know, this team together, you can go far, you can go quickly, and we can gather steam on our own, but we can go a lot further together. So that's kind of how I see things. We need to come together. Definitely, that's a big one that I think so. You know, and definitely groups like the Misha Era and all these different festivals. You know, they're knitting Irish hoodies and stuff. It's great to see that, but definitely people shouldn't feel like because they're maybe, you know, a 20-year-old goth person, they feel excluded from the Irish cultural scene, or they don't want to be conservative. They want to push their, you know, crazy left-wing agenda. Like, that's not how it has to be. Just because you're alternative in some ways, or you're gay or something. This is a big one. We have Ken O'Flynn now, you know, and that's a big one that the government try to use. Because you're gay, homosexual, you have to be then de facto left-leaning. You know, you have to be LGTB, you have to be all this. They've completely hijacked that movement, the Liberal. We saw Jim O'Callaghan, looked like he didn't even want to be there. We had Simon Harris, Micheál Martin at the LGTB rally up in Dublin. And, you know, they're pushing this stuff, and it's left-wing woke degeneracy. It's nothing to do with being gay whatsoever. And then you had Ken O'Flynn, who's actually gay. None of those ministers are gay, or I don't think so. Maybe Simon Harris might be, I don't know. But Ken O'Flynn, and then he's talking about how they've completely hijacked the movement. So it's just like this crazy irony. Like, we have actually gay people saying that LGTB is not good, and then we have non-gay people saying, no, it is good. We need to push this. And it's, again, that sort of like the kneecap thing, craziness, crazy dichotomy.
Yeah, spot on. And I've said this as well. Again, if people are too fussy about what it means to be a true rebel or a patriot who opposes the globalist agenda, if they've got certain criteria in their head, the person needs to be, you know, the basic stuff like 100% Irish genetically, heterosexual, loves 1916 rebels, loves Michael Collins, has read Pádraig Pearse, speaks Irish. You'd be left with 5 people. You know, and if that, and like you said, you need numbers. You can't achieve anything with that. And I see it all the time, because I suppose my kind of specialty area is ideology, indoctrination, the globalist agenda, and so on. And I look at this pattern, and obviously the communism thing, and I look at this pattern of people on the right shooting themselves because of their own, shooting themselves in the foot because of their own beliefs and so on. It happens all the time, and it's not good for getting those numbers up. I totally agree with what you said. You know, influencing the culture to get more people on board and like normalize the idea of being nationalist and patriots, and particularly amongst the youth. You know, because the education system is there. I mean, the plank number 10 of the Communist Manifesto, which is written in 1848, was free education in public schools. What a shocker, right? So get control of the kids' brains. So people like us, if we're not careful, are going to be the dinosaurs who believe in nationhood and traditional values and so on. So, you know, we're really up against it, and so much to say on all that. But, you know, don't only keep
just one point on that as well. Yeah. Just when you talk about the education aspect there, I don't want to interrupt you, but, you know, I have a lady emailing me every couple of weeks. She said when she went into the public library of Galway, they take down basically all my videos. There was just a few music ones that were left. I don't know how they even did that. It's incredible. They just had music videos left on my YouTube channel. Okay, so then when she went back again recently, she emailed me like 2 months ago. Then she went back recently. The whole channel is just taken down. You can't access anything on the Galway Public Library. They've just targeted the channel. Nothing else has been taken down, just my content. So they're obviously targeting people. The government are definitely being told, don't bring this guy into schools. Don't talk about me. They'll never have me on mainstream news ever. That's just never going to happen. I saw like Taya Mercer, Ben Scallon, all these people. They were on this show Dinner with the Enemy. I don't know if you saw this one. It was like all these different like Irish creators. It's really interesting. It was actually a good program. I liked watching it. And they had like a few like far right people like Ben Scallon, who you wouldn't even consider this guy or any of these people to be radical in any sense. But you had those, and then you had like the left as well. They're on, and you had a few moderate people. The one guy at the very beginning of the show who actually was like proper right-leaning conservative stuff that we would talk about in the mainstream on the right, he just got kicked off the show in a day. And then you had really moderate people, and I'm not saying Ben is moderate or Time's moderate, but you had really people that weren't in any way even pushing the boundaries. They just left everybody on the show, and it was a complete, and I talked to him about it as well. It's just a complete joke of a show, and this is what they're doing. They're trying to control that narrative. Even on the right now, they're trying to control it, but they'll never have me on their shows. They'll never have someone like me or the other creators like Michael McCarthy on Instagram. They'll never have this guy gets 15 million views per Instagram post. They'll never have this guy on any of these big mainstream platforms because they want people that they kind of got a little bit like. Ben can't talk too much because he does work for the Gript Media, and I like Ben a lot. He's a great guy, but I'm saying he has to kind of stay within the guidelines. The one guy that didn't have to stay within guidelines got kicked off the show immediately. They knew it, and then obviously my channel getting taken down from this Galway Public Library and all the libraries I would imagine around the country is because they don't want the youth to be educated. The Communist Manifesto, they'll push that. They'll have that everywhere. They had those gay trans books as well. This book is gay. They pushed those books in the Galway Library. They pushed them in the Cork Library. I saw all the great political activists, Ross LaHive, Alan Sweeney, Alan Sweeney, my neighbor that I talked to about this. They pushed all these books into the libraries for free. They're in the flipping kids section, and then someone like my content or your content would be just completely hidden and just taken down completely. You're not even allowed to see that content. This is 1930. This is 1939 type of stuff. I mean, what the hell has happened to this country? In America, they would never. A lot of flaws with America, but they would never let that happen there. That I don't think they would at least allow somewhat free speech there, a little bit. I do know they have a restriction there a little bit in some ways too, but they definitely would allow a lot, especially YouTube channels, more to be shown. So there's no right in this country that's allowed to be shown in any way whatsoever. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, again, none of this stuff shocks me. And, whenever you get these people, because like I say in my work, Chris, we're dealing with a cult pretty much. They operate like a cult. It's hundreds of millions of people in this cult all across the world. I don't know how many. And they believe they're doing the right thing. So if you come along, do your videos talking about, an immigrant crime or an IPAS center or something like that, or some journalist said something that was very left leaning or whatever you're highlighting, their brain processes what you're doing and thinks that's wrong. This is far right fascist thinking, and then they feel justified in suppressing what you're doing and stopping your reach. And if they just happen to be running a website or the YouTube channel, or they're running a school, or they're in charge of a social club or whatever it is, they're not going to allow that message to reach people. They feel that this is unethical and they've got the right way of doing it. And some of them are so brainwashed, you could literally have 100 people standing there telling that this is censorship. You realize that, right? You're policing people's thoughts. This is wrong. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, particularly if they've been through university. They've been conditioned into that too, that if anyone ever tries to tell them that they're wrong, they just ignore you because you don't know what you're talking about. The whole thing is a mess. And we keep hitting this wall. It's like it's happened all across the world in Western countries. You talk to patriots, the same shit's going on everywhere constantly. These nut jobs involved who are trying to tell us they're responsible for creating this situation, and we resist it. They tell us that we're crazy and our opinions don't have to be heard. This is completely backwards, And
the funding is incredible for these people. Left-wing NGOs, pushed massively. Millions are funded by these like woke left-wing NGOs from the US are pushing NGOs here in Ireland. We have 35,000 woke left-wing NGOs here in Ireland. 35,000. I mean, this is like that is like a flipping military. That's like a small army of people that are just pushed to say crazy stuff. And I remember speaking to an actual woman on a night out before, and she literally told me, when I leave college, and she was about 40, when I leave college, I want to be part of an NGO. I mean, it was just like, what? Like, and she was spouting off all this left-wing craziness. And, you know, this is the social regulation. They don't want you to talk about stuff. And in my personal opinion, why I got so pissed off, and why one of the reasons I made the channel as well, and why I'm really pushing this, is because of this social regulation here in Ireland. You know, and they fractured it first. The government fractured it first. They promised us kind of a nice, peaceful Irish society, like the Western world, like they were used to back in the 90s, 80s, 70s, where you're not going to get beheaded walking down the street. They promised us this, but then they broke that, the social regulation. But now the only social regulation that they have over the Irish people is other Irish people telling them, hey, don't talk about that. Don't talk about the corruption in the GA. Don't talk about this stuff. You'll get alienated. You'll get all these people to stop talking to you. But really, I couldn't care less, guys. I will now break the social regulation with my YouTube channel because they did it first. They basically, you know, pushed the first button of war, and now we're in a psychological war, because now we're pushing back and we're saying the truth about what people haven't been able to say for so long. And that's what it is. They hate it. They literally want us to stop talking every single day, but we're never going to stop talking. We're going to keep pushing every single day, and we're going to change this country once and for all. And that's how it is. These people are completely corrupt. They're completely tyrannical, and they're relying on other Irish people when you go out for pints with your friends, and when you're having the pints of Guinness with your friends, saying, I wouldn't do that. When I first started this YouTube channel, I had two friends directly tell me, oh, I'd never do that. I'd never do that. And I was already reacting to politics, and I love politics since I was younger. So I'm like, why are they telling me not to do this? It's something I love. You know, why is going against the grain? And it's not even going against the grain, because millions of people, I guarantee hundreds of thousands of people in Ireland, across Europe, in America, millions of people agree with this narrative. Absolutely. But for some reason, because these people maybe have regular 9-to-5 jobs, or because they don't want to lose their girlfriend or boyfriend or upset their family, they don't want to talk about this stuff. No. The time for talking is now. We need to start talking. Those days of not talking about things in Ireland are over. I couldn't care less. Whether you agree or not, we're going to be talking about them. And there's nothing that's ever going to stop me, ever. And that's end of story. And they hate that. This is the thing. Us Irish people, we hate that. We hate a guy. Not me. I love people speaking up, actually. I actually love crazy people speaking. I was listening to Dr. Umar, this like black nationalist radical guy in America. He's a YouTuber. And he talks about how black people shouldn't even date white women, all this crazy stuff. I actually like listening to people like that because it gives me an understanding of what they're about. And in some ways, I was like, okay, some points are correct. Now, you don't go too crazy, start listening to everyone, every political figure, and agreeing with everything. But you start to understand that the people that really are the good people in this world, the people that are open and open-minded and speaking about things that a lot of people won't speak about. I prefer people like that. I absolutely prefer people that speak their mind on a whole host of topics like you do. That's why I love watching your content all the time. I share your stuff all the time. I say this is the way forward. And a lot of Irish people, they hate that, guys. Whether they're in government, whether they're in politics, they'll never talk about this stuff, you know. And it's great to see now that we have a big pull, and we have a big sort of support in what the hell is happening everywhere in the Western world.
Brilliantly said, Chris. I mean, yeah, so many great points there, and I suppose the Irish, something I noticed, because I've lived abroad for many years as well. Like in my adulthood, I kind of lived in different countries and stuff, and I definitely, you know, thought about, you know, when you go away and you come back, you notice traits more within your own people you mightn't have seen before, because you've had a break from them, you know. And I think one of the things that's probably in our culture is, I don't know, like a lack of confidence thing in there somewhere, or a low self-esteem thing. I don't know if I'm onto something, but I think that kind of held us back, and the lefties were so good at, I talk about in my work, Chris, that since the 1920s, like the communists were in the States, in America, telling people that if they went against anyone who disagreed with them, they were encouraging people to call them fascists and racists, so it's a very old tactic. And they weren't calling people Nazis back in those days because they just weren't famous yet, but Mussolini was famous, so when the Nazis came along, then they start calling people Nazis, and these are the names they've been calling us. It's a very effective tactic, and it puts people back in their box. And like you say, when the time for silence is long gone, and people have to be more confident. I mean, the only thing I worry is that have people left it too late, because that tactic, any tactic that the enemy uses, is never going to be permanently successful. It kind of loses its, like a magic spell. It kind of wears off after a while, and people are sick of being called, racists and fascists. It doesn't work anymore. Now they have to come up with new names, and they have I actually have a section in my book where I list all the names by cause and stuff, and just to break down the psychology of it. But like you say, I mean, you have to keep being brave, keep pushing your message out there, and then ignore the naysayers. Like you said, there's always going to be people telling you that you're going too far. I mean, I deal with it all the time as well, but you have to, if you're a servant of truth, you just push on, regardless of whether people really appreciate it or not. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely well said. And it's super sad to see that, like, people that are actually really traditionally Irish don't even think like us. I was talking to a 22-year-old girl. Now, this girl, she told me she'd never been on a plane. Okay, she never left Ireland. She never left Kerry. She's from Kerry, GAA. Even a redhead. I'm the most Irish person you can get. And she said, I don't like the videos. I don't really align with what you think. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, like, this is incredible stuff. It has to be through social media and work. It can't be through her own traditional. She's playing GA. She's around Irish people constantly. Like all my friends are foreign. Like, I don't even really have, like, I mean, my good friends are Irish too, but a lot of my friends Brazilian, from Africa, so all these different places. Very, very different culture. But I know, and I will always say what's correct and what I think. I'm not going to back down from these topics just because you might lose some friends or whatever, or people might not agree with you. You might lose your girlfriend or boyfriend. I mean, this is the reality of the situation. They don't want to be questioned by their family. And this girl literally was quintessential. She was Ireland as far as I see, like my dad, and completely don't agree with anything. I mean, I couldn't believe. I said, wow, this is just complete indoctrination. And you'll lose a lot of friends. And have I lost friends? A lot of people did stop talking to me when I first started YouTube. They say, oh, you think you're going to be famous, and they insult you and they talk shit. It's like, that's not it at all. As soon as you start a YouTube channel, they think that you want to be like Jake Paul or one of these guys, like, one of these huge, like, that's not it at all. You can have a small business, or you can do other things. I do personal training as well, so it's not just the YouTube, but the social regulation is crazy. It's just crippling in Ireland. We don't do anything because everybody's afraid. And it's not about bravery per se. I do agree bravery. People say you're brave to say, I don't think I'm brave like that personally, but you are right. The bravery it takes to go out of your box, stop doing your 9 to 5, doing something else. This is what really matters. This is where true strength comes from. This is where true power comes from. And you really feel like you're helping make a change, not just because you're going against the grain, because I think that people are on this same scale. I do think that everyone thinks like this in Ireland. A lot of people think like this, but the few people that you think, like some of my friends, that I think that they're more right-leaning because they're super Irish GAA heads, really like this, and they're completely against what I'm saying. I'm like, geez, I can't believe this. This is madness, really, and complete madness. People that have lived here their whole life, both their parents are Irish, they're playing GA, and they're not on the same wavelength. It's just maddening to me. I can't believe it. And from a small village, we're from rural Ireland. I mean, it's just great. And I think this is the education. This is the education, really. This is them being told constantly by their TikTok phone, by their parents, by their teachers in school. Secondary school teachers as well, and they're female teachers, because most secondary school and primary school teachers are women. This sort of like subservient attitude, don't be subservient is the worst thing you can be. Okay, like this David Goggins, he said, if you're subservient, if you listen to everyone around you, you're gonna feel terrible. You're gonna be the biggest bitch ever. You're gonna feel like flipping, you can't do anything in life. And this confidence and motivation is what you need to pursue and be big, strong, like we all want to be. It's a lot of influences as a youth as well. I watched Rambo at 11. I was in the pub telling my friends yesterday. We just had some coffee in Galway. Beautiful, super Irish pub. Cheat Coley on the corner of the Key Street there in Galway. And we were just saying what movies we watched as kids. And, you know, you could tell the people that are more right-leaning. We used to watch these action movies, Rambo, Rocky, when we were younger. At 11, 10 years old, you wanted to be in the military. All that's gone. Those days of, you know, we used to play airsoft with all my friends down the fields, we say, down in the big forest. We used to play this huge airsoft, shooting each other, and the bullets would really hurt. Most fun I've ever had. At 16, 17, from 15 years old, 14 years old, till about 26, we played airsoft paintball, basically, every single flipping week with my friends. Amazing. Best time of my life. We had ticks on us. The ticks at those time didn't have Lyme disease. Now we have Lyme disease in Galway. I don't know where it came from. You know, that's another topic for another day. But we had beautiful times, and they're trying to get rid of that. They're trying to get rid of this masculinity. They don't want people doing airsoft, or they don't want kids going crazy, chopping down trees. We used to light fires, chop down trees, shoot each other with the airsoft. They don't want that anymore. They want just a subservient, you know, pussy society where we're just constantly on the phone. We're constantly just, you know, listen to this bullshit, left-wing ideology. And they don't want all men just castrated, you know, not hitting the gym, don't do any of that. And then it's like disgusting society that we now live in. But hopefully we can pull it back by waking people up and telling people day to day what the truth is, you know.
Yeah, I mean, so many great stuff there. Well, the first one, you mentioned about the girl who was like the image of Ireland so much, but yet she's almost like a little bit Marxist by default or leftist by default. Yes. Talk about that in the book. It's like people are resistant to this stuff, and you're like, my God, you look like you could be jumping out of a pot of gold dressed like a fucking leprechaun. Yet, you know, for any Americans watching, like the stereotype of Ireland, but yet they're resistant to these ideas is extraordinary. Like they're like that way by default. I mean, the stuff that you present them with is actually what should be normal to them, not the other way around. And it's incredible. Like I always say, I look at people and it takes me a few seconds to get a read on them. Now, it's easier with a content creator because getting a read on people when it comes to ideology is part of what I do, of course. But like, say, it's different for, say, someone like yourself who's a content creator. I can see your opinions in the stuff that you make. But a normal person, it might take a few minutes to figure them out. And sometimes you think, oh, they're kind of on my side and they understand me. And then they come out with something mental, or you say something and they kind of go, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? There's only two genders, like, you know, transphobe, and you go, right, for fuck's sake, and you get that shock. Yeah. Like, it's incredible. Like, that's why I say it's a lot of this stuff is not natural. What's going on here? And as for the masculinity thing and so on, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in my work. The whole thing of the lefty kind of state control thing and controlling the education system, turning people into the collective, and so on. They don't want strength in society and independent thought and all these types of things. And, you know, the stereotype that they're not hard-working types. You know, like you said earlier, people who come through the education system, their education is all geared towards them, you know, joining the NGO complex, which doesn't help the economy. It actually takes money from it. And I mean, I've had like a very varied life so far, but I've done some really hard jobs like scaffolding labor, farming, construction stuff. It's horrible work. I wouldn't wish that on my enemies sometimes, particularly in extreme weather conditions. I'm talking about freezing cold mornings in the London winter to an Australian summer. I've done it all, and it really gives you a sense of that mental strength, personal strength, where, you know, you're not so easily malleable as well. You can do your own thing and go against the grain, like you said. I mean, if you can handle a bit of physical rough and tumble, whether it's sports or airsoft, whatever it is, you're certainly not going to be afraid of people calling you hurdy words or people ostracizing you from the group. No, kind of ranting here, but you get what I'm saying. That thing of strength and so on. It's a big part of independence, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it's definitely the mental strength. You know, people talk about physical strength. A lot of people that I've realized that do go to the gym and play sports, that I played sports my whole life since 3 years old. A lot of these people are actually very, I don't want to say beta in their mannerisms, but very subservient, very just listening to everything. Whatever is mainstream, that's correct. You know, if it's in the newspaper, it's correct. Everything is just correct if it's mainstream. If it's not in my books, it's not correct. You know, no conspiracy, no questioning, not even conspiracy, no questioning of anything. You should question everything. You know, this is one of the things I was taught at 15 years old. Question everything. Okay. And not in a aggressive manner that I disagree with you, but let's have a talk about this. Okay. is it good that we do X, Y, and Z, or can we do it this way? Is it a better way to do it, or whatever, and people, you can tell how much they liked me in secondary school. I was actually in a job, I'll say specifics, I don't really care, but I was in this Evergreen, this like a health food shop in Galway. And I remember the manager saying to me, they brought me in for a talk because all I was caring about was selling. I wanted to sell product and, help people, but also make money for the flipping manager, for the company. And I was working sales, just talking to people, and they brought me into the back room and they said, "Why are you trying to change the culture of this company?" And all I was trying to do was just help them with their profits and talk to people and try and upsell people, And it's not about money. I really, if you're in social media for money, you should do something else. Get into finance, okay? Because you're not going to find it there, okay? But that was what I wanted to do, and they were saying, "Why are you trying to change everything?" So you can imagine this sort of attitude that I had. I wanted to go against the status quo, and more people should be like that. Not trying to change their culture, but you should be trying to, maybe carve your own path in life, not just follow absolutely everything that you think is right because they told you something is correct. And this is what the media is trying to do. They're trying to tell us what's correct. And how can you start a family if you're arguing with your girlfriend? How can you start a family if you're arguing with your partner? This is what they want. They want you to be constantly arguing, because women are, I don't want to get too, into the whole women aspect, but women are 80% mostly left-leaning. Some of them are really based. And I've noticed now in Ireland, this is crazy. I've noticed a lot of women, though, are very right-leaning now. A lot of people I know that are right-leaning, even more so than the men, which is incredible. I never, you never thought you'd see that. But you do see a lot of really right-leaning women, whether they're Eastern European or they're Irish. A lot of great Irish women that are like that now. And it's amazing to see that. And a lot of the men are pushing this nonsense. I couldn't believe how a man, with flipping testosterone in their body would push some of this craziness. It just seems, super foreign to me, honestly.
Yeah, that's why I think this lefty kind of indoctrination stuff is extremely powerful, and it can transcend groups and break, distort our perception of things, and we can find in people we wouldn't have previously expected. That's why I kind of talk to people as, again, like judging people based on their beliefs and what they say, and considering these people a problem for society, that they if they're full of confidence but their ideas are crazy and destructive and they've got power and influence, they're going to cause havoc. And they're getting their way. And I like hit you with like doom and gloom here, but I mean, it's never a guarantee that the goodies just win because they're goodies. Like usually the bigger stick is the more powerful group wins because it's more powerful, not because they're more ethical. And if we're up against it, it's one of the, we're talking about masculinity and toughness. It's one of the hard truths about life to face that. And that's why I was saying for a while that, we're really up against it, and it's no guarantee that we win just because we're righteous. It's because we have to be stronger, more organized, and more effective, because it's been the same through human history pretty much. It's I don't think that's too outlandish to say that.
No, definitely not. The masculinity aspect is completely destroyed. If you're constantly going on dates with girls and they're constantly throwing these crazy things at you, these crazy ideas, that may be okay if you're just trying to, I don't know, like, have fun or whatever. But if you're trying to settle down, start a family and have kids and, push on the Irish nation and the people, it's going to be impossible. It's going to be impossible if this woman thinks, all these crazy things. Maybe it doesn't transfer too heavily, but definitely in relationships, with friendships, I don't care personally. I'll hang out with anyone, literally. I hang out with friends, we go drinking, and I still do. People are left-leaning. I just, want to keep maybe sometimes the opinions to yourselves. You don't have to bring politics into everything, every aspect of life. But now it's almost starting to become like that. Everything is starting to become so politicized. The sports now are politicized. Flipping everything is politicized. Your friendship groups, everything, and it's getting very fractured. And that's, I don't know if that's that good either. It is definitely what's happening now is people are bunching up into groups. Race, this religion, this, and then people are really starting to group up. I've seen that in the last few months now, definitely. And if they're going to be doing it on the left, unfortunately, we kind of have to do it a little bit as well. I don't particularly like that. Like I said, it's more policy for me. But, if people are grouping up into groups and we're going to be left behind on our own, looking at each other, then maybe we should be in groups as well. It's just, it kind of is how it is nowadays. I wish it wasn't like that, but, if it's going to be happening, that's going to be happening. There's not much we can do there.
Absolutely. And Just thinking as we kind of come towards the end here, Chris, I mean, like as you did predict, we could probably talk for hours, and like I've had like a mad couple of weeks, and I've been kind of burnt out and stuff, and sometimes Absolutely. Like, you know, you kind of go to yourself, like, you know, depending on your mood, you go to do an interview like today, and part of my brain goes, it'd be great to talk to Chris, but do I have the energy? Can I do it? And then I need a little bit of a wind up, and then I'm like, shit, you know, only 2 hours, you know, let's go for 7 or whatever. But it's great because as you've said as well before, I mean, I'm sure as well you've thought about this, all this stuff is connected. You know, there's so many like related topics and stuff, and you know, all this it's all relevant sort of thing. But like as we come towards the end, is there anything you kind of want to mention or bring up that we haven't covered, like related to your channel? Do you have any plans going forward for any new kind of content or anything you want to kind of mention to us?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I appreciate having me on. You know, like you said, you know, I had a long day as well. You're definitely doing a lot more work than me, I'm sure. I'm just, you know, mentally straining myself here. But for the day, and then when I come to today, it's great to see that we had such a great conversation. We could talk for 10 hours, I'm sure. We could talk forever. But no, just I appreciate having me on, and definitely I just want to see more people making content. You know, the more people come together, the more people make content, the better. You know, put all the little differences aside. I see little arguments on the right. It's okay, and people, because we're masculine and we want to, you know, show each other how we are. Maybe that's okay to do that, but you know, look at the end goal. What's going to really be the end goal is what we try and focus on, what I try and focus on. So I appreciate having me on, and definitely check out the channel. You know, I have a ton of videos. I try and do mostly politics now. Going forward on the channel, I'm definitely going to do more of the political aspect. I'm going to do more music as well if people are into that kind of thing. You know, music is cultural, but you know, I react to a whole range of different things, and that's also to kind of keep people guessing. I don't want people to be 100% knowing exactly what I want to do on the next video. But no, definitely, yeah, keep pushing your book as well. Is amazing. I read bits about. I watched your podcast, your lecture as well. That was great to see. So just seeing people come together more, definitely. And it doesn't mean that we have to be, you know, having drinks at the weekend every day, but just kind of giving each other even space if we're arguing about things to let people grow and, you know, hopefully push the movement further, and we can see people like the National Party or other parties kind of come to fruition, or other people rise up and keep pushing this content, because you know, everything helps when it comes to, you know, the movement and what actually we can do for each other, you know, because this is a long-term movement. I think some people think overnight we can just, you know, change things, and that's not how it is. You know, unfortunately, you know, this is going to take a long time, maybe 5-10 years. But you know, I think if we do that, then we can definitely push this movement forward to a better direction. So I appreciate having me on, Emmett. You're a great guy. Thank you for having me on as well, your platform. And hopefully we connect in the future as well, and connect in person as well would be great. And you know, to see all these people, like I saw the National Party putting up videos from last weekend in Galway, I think, doing different podcasts and interviews. It's great to see all these people putting out content. It motivates me. So hopefully we can motivate each other. You know, it's like the gym. When you're 15 years old and you see a guy that you want to look like physique-wise or something, or someone has maybe some other aspect of life that you want, try and motivate other people. You know, don't think of it as like a challenge, trying to get more views or more content better than somebody else. Try and think that you're helping motivate people as a whole in the movement. That's what I think. I'm not trying to compete with anyone on views, or trying to get one up on other people, or trying to disregard any people. If you're on the right, then, you know, it's all love, and I'm trying to help motivate people to push forward. So I appreciate it a lot. So thanks very much.
That's brilliant, Chris. Well, thanks very much for your time today. It was a great conversation, as we talked about. I mean, you know, best luck going forward with all your plans and stuff. So, you know, I'll make sure to, you know, we'll pimp out the video when it's done, and make sure it's on X and it goes up on YouTube as well, and get the message out there and do a bit of cross promo and stuff as well. So,
absolutely.
So, Chris, thanks very much for your time today. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks very much, Emma. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay, folks, there you have it. That was Chris Walsh. So a great pleasure to talk to him. So we were kind of building up to that for a while, but we finally got it done. So make sure you subscribe to Chris on YouTube, and also follow him on Twitter. I kind of brainwashed you with the handle during the show, but don't worry, the links will be down below for that as well. Also follow him on Instagram. But thank you very much, folks. I will be back soon with the next. I'm not sure what it is. Got a couple of podcast interviews lined up, and a few surprises coming down the tracks too. But thank you very much for your time, folks. Please share the hell out of this. Get the message out there, and I will see you in the next one.